across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Two minutes past 6, it is Monday morning. Welcome to the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. Mark Dolan in for one final programme. Jez is back tomorrow. And what a busy 4 hours we have for you. Breaking this morning at a fresh crisis for Sir Keir Starmer as the man that he appointed British ambassador to the United States and the architect of the new Labour project, Peter Mandelson, stands accused of receiving thousands of pounds from disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. And the scandal isn't just about money, with a photograph emerging of the former business secretary under Gordon Brown standing half naked in his underpants alongside a woman in a shower robe. Wasn't it Labour that used to talk about Tory sleaze? Meanwhile, the Epstein files reveal that Mandelson lobbied his own government colleagues to scrap a planned tax on bankers' bonuses, reportedly to help his friend Jeffrey. Now, at 3 minutes past 6 on a Monday morning, can you imagine if this was a former Conservative politician or a sitting Reform UK MP? There would be uproar. And as the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer urges Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to give evidence to US Congress about Epstein, why the wall of silence around Mandelson, his key political ally? Don't forget, this is a Prime Minister that heralded the arrival of Peter Mandelson as the ambassador to the United States. What does it tell us about the PM's judgment? And why didn't Starmer fire Lord Mandelson and chuck him out of the party before Mandelson had the opportunity to resign his membership? This whole thing stinks. It is Labour sleaze. Your reaction, please. 0344 499 1000. We'll bring you more on this self-inflicted crisis that threatens to engulf our current government. And what about this for a statistic? A quarter of Brits would be better off on benefits than going to work. Should we call time on Benefits Britain? I would argue that the benefits system used to be a safety net. Now it's a way of life, and it is a war on alarm clock Britain. So do we call time on it? Who gets benefits and who doesn't? You decide. Give me a call now, 0344 499 1000. Sophia is taking your calls. Christian's in charge. Mark is pressing the buttons, the lead engineer of the show. And Damien directing our TV output. You can hear us on the radio, DAB+. Lovely to have you listening. Or you can watch. Just head to YouTube, search Talking Up We Pop. And as the saying goes, let's talk. And we'll kick off with today's front pages. The Daily Telegraph: Mandelson faces order for Epstein evidence. Lord Peter Mandelson is set to be summoned to give evidence before Congress about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Sources close to the powerful US House Oversight Committee, which has spearheaded the release of millions of government-held files on the convicted paedophile, said it was poised to issue the Labour peer with a demand to testify in Washington, D.C. And what about this shocking headline on the front page of the Daily Mail? And it's our main question of the morning. Sick Britain to hand out the most benefits in the entire G7. Did this government not get the memo that we're broke, that we've got a deficit, that more goes out than comes in? How about this? Britain is set to become the biggest spender on benefits in the G7 within a few years. Analysis by the Telegraph of Office for Budget Responsibility data shows that the UK is on track to spend 2.2% of GDP on incapacity and disability benefits towards the end of the decade. Now, be careful, Christian, with the language on this, because when you hear the word disability, when I hear the word disability, when my outstanding studio guest, Rafe Hadel-Manku, historian and commentator, hears the word disability, we have empathy, don't we? And we think, well, disability, that's why we pay our taxes. But I'm not talking about folk that are blind or are hearing impaired or are in a wheelchair or have some other major physical challenge. We're talking here about some people with ADHD. What is ADHD? I thought that was a band from the 80s. But it seems like everyone's got it. Now, I will grant you that there are a portion of the population that have something severe along those ADHD lines. You've got kids that are literally just snooker loopy, right? Off the ceiling. You've got to peel them off the ceiling unless they have the medication. I get that. My heart goes out to them. But it seems like everyone middle class has got ADHD. Then there is stress and there is anxiety. Well, who hasn't got stress with inflation at nearly 4%? Who hasn't got anxiety with inflation going up and up and up? What about unemployment? It's returned. There are people that have got no jobs. That's what I call stress. There is the cost of living. There is getting a GP appointment when you're ill. There is trying to find a dentist. That is stress. There is walking down the street being afraid to take your phone out of your pocket because it will get snatched by a mugger on an e-bike. That is stress. So do we call time on Benefits Britain? It is a truly shocking set of statistics in regard to just how much we pay people to not work. And the issue you've got is that 10 million people who are of working age are not active in the economy, but you're not one of them, because this is Talk, which is the home of common sense, and this is the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, which is all about Alarm Clock Britain. And you get up in the morning, you set your alarm, you put in more than you take out, and this is not, I suspect, why you pay your taxes. A quarter of Brits would be better off not working. Your reaction to that, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. And let me tell you, don't we, Christian, we love the voice notes because you are busy. This isn't just the most popular speech-based breakfast show in the country. It is also the busiest. I'm busy, Rafe Heidelman-Kuhn is busy, okay, and you are busy. So we'll accommodate your opinions via voice notes, via text, any which way. It's all about getting your opinions on the radio and on the telly. Countryside to become less white in rural diversity drive. Have I really got to do the show today, Christian? Because when I see that headline, I just want to go home and lie down in a dark room. Countryside to become less white in rural diversity drive. The British countryside were made into a less white environment under nationwide diversity plans. Officials in rural areas, including the Chilterns and the Cotswolds, have pledged to attract more minorities under plans drawn up by the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. The main headline here is that these schemes are racist, because what somebody is doing with a clipboard is going around the countryside, Christian, counting black people. I mean, that's actually what they're doing, and counting Asian people and counting British people of colour who are not white with a clipboard. And I think that's pretty racist. The bottom line is that we have a multi-ethnic society and we have a great country, and people will go where they want. And I can assure you that these sorts of policies, exactly like diversity, equity and inclusion, will be dreamt up by woke, do-gooding, middle-class, white people who are the very source of all of the problems in our country. Because I always say at 10 minutes past 6 that we need an economic revolution in this country, including get control of Benefits Britain. We need to bring down taxes so we can have national income, so we can pay the doctors, the nurses and the school teachers and the police officers. And we need a cultural revolution too. We need to end this kind of woke nonsense that claims the countryside is too white. What's going on? Are these sheep racist? I suspect so. The Times newspaper, new Epstein victim, I was sent for sex with Andrew. We'll be covering that. A really great booking today, Christian. We're going to find out what the king is going through. Because, by the way, that is anxiety and stress. Poor old King Charles doesn't need this. He's got cancer. He's trying to enjoy his reign. He waited decades to become king, didn't he, Marky? And now he's inherited a hot mess. His younger brother, first of all, that idiot son of his over in California, virtue signalling. Now his brother brings the family into disgrace. And we're going to speak to a man that knows King Charles very well, his former butler, after 9 o'clock. Ministers pay hospitals employed to cut waiting lists. More gerrymandering. The Sun newspaper, Lewis Hamilton dating Kim Kardashian. If that's not breaking news, I don't know what is. The Daily Express, PM wants to rewind freedom that Brexit gave us. The iPaper, bring justice for Epstein victims, Andrew and Mandelson told. Daily Mirror, Epstein flew me to Andrew at Royal Lodge. By the way, yeah, well done, Mirror. Where's Lord Mandelson, the architect of the new Labour project and the man that your wonderful Prime Minister Keir Starmer appointed US ambassador to the United States from the UK. Daily Mail, Andrew in new Epstein legal threat. And The Guardian. Now, well done, The Guardian. To be fair, well done, The Guardian. You see, look, I will call it out when people do good things. Mandelson under fire as files appear to show Epstein sent him 75 grand. Oh my God, I've never said well done, The Guardian. But what they've done there is called out the alleged crimes of a left-wing politician. So fair play. There you go. You see, we can have peace and happiness on a Monday morning. Rafe Heidelmann, so good to see you.
Always a pleasure to be with you, even at this early hour.
Well, listen, you are somebody that doesn't need sleep. You're an unstoppable opinion machine, so I'm just going to put 10p in the slot and watch you go. And where do we start? First of all, can I just say, Rafe, can you imagine the furore if you replaced Lord Mandelson, embroiled in this sex and financial scandal, replace that with, I don't know, Boris Johnson or David Cameron or Robert General, or may God forbid, Nigel Farage. Can you imagine if it was a Tory or Reform former government minister embroiled in this?
Well, we know, of course, because we don't have bad memories. We can remember how the media and how the political class on the left, all of the elite institutions were actually outraged whenever there was anything to deal with alleged Tory sleaze, for example.
Like, for example, when Boris Johnson stood near a glass of orange juice during the pandemic. I mean, oh my goodness.
I always said the man walked into a surprise birthday party and everyone went absolutely insane, whereas here you have suggestions, clear allegations of far more consequential, allegedly illegal activity taking place. And of course, there's tumbleweed from many of the usual sources which you would expect to be spitting venom.
Well, listen, Christian's been hard at work on this one, and we've got Starmer very proudly announcing the arrival of Peter Mandelson at the US Embassy as ambassador. Take a listen to this.
Already I can feel there's a real buzz around Washington right now. You can sense that there's a new leader in town. That he's a true one-off, a pioneer in business and in politics. Many people love him. Others love to hate him. But to us, he's just Peter.
What a numpty. That speech has come back to haunt him, hasn't it?
Well, there's still a bit of a buzz around him, I would suggest to you, and he really is a one-off, isn't he? Now, normally, of course, we would delight in the schadenfreude about Mandelson and Starmer finding themselves in this position, except, of course, this man was the British ambassador to America. This reflects so badly on our country and on the rest of us, particularly, of course, when we lost such a wonderful ambassador in the form of Dame Karen Pierce, hugely powerful, influential, well-loved in Washington, and had him replaced by Starmer. By Mandelson. There are huge questions Starmer has to still ask on all this, but it goes to the essence of the man as a politician. We have said time and time again, this is a person who lacks political instinct, who lacks political acumen, and simply isn't equipped for the job. There were clear questions that weren't settled and needed to be asked, and they're coming back to bite him.
Yes, his judgment is non-existent. He can be reliably trusted to make the wrong choice, whatever the issue, economically, politically, who he appoints. The guy's got no backbone, but he's got no brain cells either. He should never go on Deal or No Deal, because he would always choose the wrong box.
Yes, and just remember, when he got elected, Andrew Marr and all the great sages saying, finally the adults are back in the room. We have maturity returning. Well, I'm sorry, if this is maturity, I think we all need a bit of puberty very, very soon. Well, Starmer does certainly. Needs to understand this cannot go on. I mean, we are a laughing stock right now. Every few weeks it seems as if there's another scandal of this sort infecting our newspapers, and we cannot carry on like this. This is the most unpopular Prime Minister we've ever had. Never before has a Prime Minister descended so fast in the popularity ratings. We simply need to clean up ship because we cannot carry on like this any longer.
We do indeed, and someone that definitely needs to clean up ship is Peter Mandelson, who on the front page of the Telegraph is photographed in his jockey briefs. I mean, I'm not sure how to describe them. They're not boxer shorts, are they? They're not Y-fronts. It's some newfangled... Rafe, I shouldn't wish to intrude on private grief and ask what you're rocking this morning, but that's a very retro look. But the bottom line is it's a former government minister, half naked, in a room with a woman in a shower robe. I mean, this is sleaze central, isn't it?
I mean, this raises all sorts of questions. I mean, amongst the most bizarre suggestions as to who that lady is, I've heard Meghan Markle's name mentioned because of her hair in a bun there. I mean, with the way she's standing there.
Well, I don't see any flower sprinkles.
But anyway, I mean, questions do need to be asked here about, and he needs to answer these. Of course, his standard, for a man who was at the centre of New Labour and was allegedly such a safe pair of hands, the man has the shortest memory in history. So any question you're going to ask him, he says, I have no recollections whatsoever, not even over allegedly £75,000 or dollars worth of money transferred to him by Epstein and to his husband. Questions do need to be asked, but I'm afraid we're going to get the same question. I have no memory of this.
And of course, he's a PR mastermind, which is why he was a successful architect of New Labour who invented spin. And what he's doing, in my view, by saying that we need to check the veracity of these financial documents, is buying himself time so that the story can cool down. The other issue you've got, I mean, that's this photograph of him. He's half naked. He's with a woman in a shower robe. I mean, how you wouldn't remember an encounter like that is anyone's guess. But Mandelson's great defence regarding any salacious rumours in relation to Epstein was that he's gay. Take a listen to this.
Possibly some people will think because that I'm a gay man, I was sort of insensitised, or I wasn't attuned to what was going on. I don't really accept that. I think the issue is that because I was a gay man in his circle, I was kept separate from what he was doing in the sexual side of his life.
Well, it looks like he's played the gay card and it's not going to work.
No, and it's not, it is the case, of course, that so not everyone necessarily is exclusively gay or is exclusively straight. We know that from the Kinsey report and all the scientific evidence on there. I mean, you're quite right. He has set himself up as being famously the master of the dark arts, the Svengali of Labour, but he's got himself absolutely tangled in his own strings here. Look, we know Mandelson loved to be seen as a bad boy. We have exchanges in the Epstein files with Ghislaine Maxwell in which he says that, he likes to live fast and furious. She calls him disgusting and says, well, I love to be around disgusting people. The idea that someone like Mandelson didn't have an inkling that he was in the company of people who, let's say, didn't have Snow White backgrounds, I think is for the birds. Doesn't matter if you're gay or not. There was an aura, an air of sleaze around him, which anyone who wasn't in his inner circle could also easily identify. And this man was spending so much time on Lolita Island, on this Necker Island, not Necker Island, but his island that Epstein owned, in his dressing gown, very relaxed around him. You can't tell me he didn't see people wandering around who perhaps he might have wondered why someone of that age was wandering around.
And in the last 24 hours, a wall of silence from the likes of Sir Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner, who were a stuck record about Tory sleaze. They are really struggling. Labour did the morning politics rounds on the breakfast shows, and here is the Community Secretary, Steve Reed, who can't have enjoyed that gig yesterday morning, defending the actions of this government in relation to Peter Mandelson.
You're asking me here about something that happened nearly 20 years ago. I don't know the full detail of it. I wasn't in government 20 years ago.
I think he acknowledges that money did go to his partner.
That's right. I don't know whether he declared it or not. He should have done. The declaration rules have been brought in by then. So I think it would be for Peter Mandelson to explain whether or not that money was properly declared, and if not, then he will need to account for that. But I don't want to jump the gun and make assumptions. I think we need to find out exactly what happened.
Rafe, where do you think this Mandelson scandal goes?
Well, firstly, there need to be more questions asked about this money and what the purpose was for, but we have also clear allegations that he actually lobbied the New Labour when he was business secretary to essentially get rid of the proposed tax on bankers' bonuses, which is being alleged that he did explicitly to benefit Epstein. He says that he was acting on behalf of all bankers, but questions really need to be asked about whether this man was taking cash to lobby. That's certainly the suggestion some people are making here. But also, why is it that it took Mandelson himself to resign as a member of the Labour Party? After all of the discussions we've had for months now about this person, why did Starmer and the Labour Party not kick him out of the party? They should have taken the first act, not give him the honourable route of saying, well, I'm going to resign from the Labour Party.
And we knew that he was a wrong-un, provably a wrong-un, prior to his appointment as UK ambassador to the United States to Washington, Rafe, because this is a guy that was fired as a cabinet minister twice, including on one occasion taking a loan from Geoffrey Robertson, which he didn't reveal to his then mortgage provider. So the guy has been mired in sleaze for years and years and years. He's the architect of the Labour project, and I would argue the architect of Labour sleaze. Next up, should Andrew Mountbatten Windsor be in jail? It's 6:22. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is
6:24, you are listening to the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show on Talk. I'm with you for one more day just today. Lovely to have your company. I'll be back on Saturday. And Sean in Gloucester, good morning, Mark. Good to see you on a Monday. Normal people are far beyond the point of having enough of this ideological, useless Labour Party. They just need to go. And as regard benefits Britain, benefits should only be paid to Brits that have paid into the system for at least 5 years. Sean, you raise a very good point, because yes, the scope of the welfare state is far too capacious these days, but also who gets it is an egregious waste of public resources. I completely agree. I wouldn't go to the United States or South Africa or America or New Zealand or anywhere else expecting to receive a payout from their taxpayers. Surely we are mugs for doing just that in this country. Cliff in Berkshire, good morning, Mark. We're talking about the countryside because the authorities want to make it less white. You heard me right. And Cliff says, I do wish someone could explain this daft madness to me, exactly why diversity in itself is so great and desirable in the first place. Well, what's interesting is that if there's ultra diversity, if open borders, unchecked immigration was so good for us, you wouldn't need adverts saying it, would you? You wouldn't need government campaigns. You wouldn't need speeches from prime ministers. If it was so great, it just would be great. Because when the sun comes up, it's great. You don't need an advert going, isn't it great when it's sunny? Antibiotics are great when you've got, I don't know, an infected finger. You don't need, why are they pushing this agenda? Why are they pushing this message? Why? Because we've got integration problems. No one's against immigration, only the scale of it. Margaret, if anyone wants to move to the countryside, they should adapt to the countryside, not change it to suit them. Otherwise, we will lose our traditions. It's true, Margaret, because an earlier campaign to make the countryside less white involved more halal shops, apparently. So I'm told that's progress. Steve, Mark, 2 questions about this Mandelson business. Who was taking all these photographs and for what purpose seems a rather strange thing to do in a private environment. Well, Steve, I think you're right. And I think that it's likely that what Epstein had done is created a honey trap where he has seduced some very powerful people around the world with sex and money. And what he's done is photographed them with their fingers in the till, so to speak, so that that could be used against them in the years ahead. Some are suggesting that Epstein was in the pocket of the Kremlin and the KGB. We'll get more on that shortly. But let's have a look at the small matter of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor now, who is facing pressure, Rafe Heidel Manku, to appear at US Congress to tell the US authorities everything he knew about Epstein. And he faces a new legal threat after a second woman alleged that Epstein flew her to Britain for sex. The unnamed woman says she was taken to Buckingham Palace for tea afterwards. Her US lawyer last night issued an ultimatum to Andrew and the royal family to sit down and to discuss all of these serious allegations. Well, this problem for Andrew doesn't go away, and it appears that the quicksand continues to move.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, you know, he thought everything was behind him. He thought he'd been cut off by the king and put into Marsh Farm, a tiny property on the estate where he was supposed to live out his final days in obscurity. Now he's back on the front pages in just as much trouble as he was at any time over the last few years with his allegations that Epstein flew a young woman over to see him, to have sex with him, after which she says she was given a tour of Buckingham Palace and afternoon tea. Now, of course, you have to say, why did it take so long for this lady to come forward? It's been a long time. It's not as if she wouldn't have known that these issues have been ongoing for a while. That has to be said. But yes, undoubtedly now there are huge calls. We even have had the Prime Minister himself say that it's time Andrew Mountbatten Windsor cooperated with American authorities. Now, he can't be compelled to do anything because he hasn't been charged with any offence, so he can't be extradited. He can only go there on his own volition. There is a treaty that does exist to allow this sort of thing, so if he ever went to America, he could actually be compelled to give testimony, but as long as he stays outside of America, he won't be forced to do that. Of course, he's no longer a prince, according to the palace, which means, of course, that the old argument that he was somehow immune no longer applies. He is unofficially a member of the public. I think it would do him a lot of good if he actually did cooperate. That would only require necessarily a Zoom call he could do from the safe security.
But wouldn't that be Newsnight, the sequel?
Well, this is the question. Is there anything else left to hide? Because all we've had time and again is a tissue of lies. He claims to have gone to see Epstein to break off the relationship. Only a month later, he's making plans to meet him again. We know, and what time and again, every time he says, I've told you everything I know, something else comes out to bite him. I think if he just came clean, people at least would say, well, at least finally he has shown himself to be that honourable gentleman he told Emily Maitlis he was years ago, and which, of course, we have trouble believing.
Indeed. Well, on Talk Breakfast yesterday, we interviewed Andrew Lowney, whose book, entitled The Fall of the House of York, was the beginning of the end for Andrew, published last year with some devastating and damning revelations. Andrew Lowney told me that there's worse to come regarding Andrew and that he should be in jail.
Yes, I know. I've spoken to Andrew about this myself last week, actually, and we have to. There is more to come. Andrew Lowney is the man who's got his finger in all this. I'm not privy to this sort of information, but it certainly is the case that it's in his best interest to cooperate with authorities as fully as he can now to mitigate against any possibility of charges down the road.
Well, it is 6:30. This is Talk Breakfast. A quarter of Brits would be better off on benefits. Should we call time on benefits? Britain, my number is 0344 499 1000. Also, apparently the countryside is too white. Do we need to do something about that? Is the countryside racist? Let me know your thoughts. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. And send us a voice note as well. Next up, anger around council houses for asylum seekers. You won't believe this story. That's next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to the Jeremy Carr Breakfast Show. Mark Dolan with you today for one day only, and so many stories to get through, including a fresh scandal engulfing this Prime Minister and this Labour government. And it's Peter Mandelson, icon of the New Labour project, who stands accused of financial and sexual sleaze as well. We'll bring you more on that shortly. But Prince Andrew, of course, is at the epicentre, at the heart of this story regarding the latest data drop of Epstein files. And here's a voice note from Hev on the artist formerly known as Prince Andrew.
Good morning, Mark and Rafe. This is Hev from Kent. Andrew Mountbatten, Windsor. Yeah, there might be photographs and letters and all the rest of it, but in the court of law, he hasn't been found guilty of anything as yet. So you can't really throw him in a cell and chuck away the key, can you? It's a tricky one, but if he's not been found guilty of anything, you know, he can't be put in the slammer. I mean, you know, people have been put in the slammer for less, but they've been through the court system.
Hev, a fair point. Keep those voice notes coming. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer is facing calls from Labour MPs to scrap plans to put asylum seekers in new council homes, potentially forcing the Prime Minister, Rafe Haydel-Mancu, into another embarrassing U-turn. Around 200 local authorities have registered interest in a pilot scheme that would fund building homes or refurbishing derelict sites for asylum seekers. They include Brighton and Hove, Hackney, Peterborough, Thanet and Powys. And this tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it, about broken Britain, that with a housing shortage, with British people desperate to get on the housing ladder, that the people at the front of the queue for new build housing are asylum seekers and illegal immigrants.
This boils my blood. I'm one of the very few commentators who for years, at least 5 years, has consistently said we need to empty all the hotels, but we need to empty all the private accommodation too. And unfortunately, people have been hoodwinked into thinking, well, he's getting on with emptying the hotels. That's fine, but where are they going to go? They're going to go into public housing and into private housing.
This is deck chairs on the Titanic,
deck chairs on it, but it's worse. In a way, it's better to have these illegal migrants on a golf course far out of town rather than right next door to where you live or opposite your child's school, as is often now going to be the case. Look, what you need to do, it sticks in the craw. It goes against that fundamental British trait of something not being cricket. And this is so unjust that decent British people who've been on housing waiting lists for years are being piggybacked over by people who've just arrived here on a dinghy who we have no idea who they are. As I've said for years, we need to have camps. You know, after World War II, there were 250,000 Polish people left in this country who couldn't go back to where they came from. So they were housed in these military-type camps. They were very happy there for 10, 15 years. Elderly people, women, children. My mother's cousin was one of them. She got married in one of these camps, never complained about them. Why, if they were good enough for women and children in the 1950s conditions, why are young men of fighting age being put up in hotels and being put up in council houses and prime properties in the middle of towns and cities? It's absolutely ridiculous. Put them all in those houses and give British people the rights to have those houses. I've said it before, citizenship should confer benefits quite literally. Those benefits mean you get the welfare, you get the housing. Nobody else has a right to that.
Most definitely. And I think prefabricated, simple, basic accommodation is appropriate for an asylum seeker, especially someone that's an illegal immigrant, but actually anyone seeking asylum in the country. Simple and basic, because there needs to be a clear message that citizens are treated differently to those who have entered the country illegally, broken the law to be here.
This is all about pull factors. Again, I've said for years, as the French have, you've got to make Britain less attractive than France. And people need to understand the countries that these people are coming from are so impoverished that a one-star hotel is like the Ritz-Carlton for them, you know? So even going to a military camp and being in a modern-day Nissan hut is actually a step up from what they've come from. So this is not cruel and inhumane treatment by any stretch of the imagination, and actually you want them to understand that they're not going to have a rosy time. I personally would have them in cruise ships in the Channel, as I've said for a long time.
Well, the Bibby Stockholm was an outstanding idea.
But proper cruise ships, when they're filled up so that they will never set foot on Blighty. If we can't turn the boats back, they're picked up, they're put on these cruise ships. When the cruise ships are filled up, they're sailed off to the South Georgia Islands. And once they're being processed on a Windsor Island in the Atlantic, it won't take long for the meshes to come back. Don't even bother trying, because you're never going to set foot on British territory.
Most definitely. And I think people don't realise that whilst the taxpayer-funded hotels were a huge waste of money and have cost billions and have impacted local communities, and of course, you know, if you've got a migrant hotel that was previously used for weddings and other family celebrations, then it's a real cultural impact too. So no one's defending the migrant hotels, but these houses of multiple occupancy are problems as well, because you've got like a nice neighbourhood, like a suburban street, and there's an HMO in there with 8 or 10 men, undocumented men, living on your street next door to you, playing music, smoking weed, indulging in criminal activity, or just being bored, dangerous men. This is potentially even worse.
I'd say it's far worse personally, and I've been to Great Yarmouth and other places, and there is a sense of intimidation. People don't feel safe, and you have to, you know, your heart goes out to these places where, of course, they thrive on tourism, and no tourists want to go to these seaside towns when they feel unsafe in those places, and of course they often can't even get a place to stay because everything's been taken up by migrants.
Look at Crowborough. It's 500 men in a camp down the road. Well, with a home of multiple occupancy, they're next door to your house.
Precisely. And the issue with Cobra, to me, is quite simple. Just build strong fences, right? There's no reason why illegal immigrants need to have the ability to leave these camps and roam around town centres. If, you know, ideally camps would be somewhere isolated, where they're far away from small towns, but where they are near a town like Crowborough, simply limit them to the confines and the precincts of the camp.
Most definitely. Good morning, Mark, says Dave. I'm not surprised that Peter Mandelson is once again embroiled in a scandal. Only surprise is it's taken this long to come out. Mark in Selby says, good morning. So Labour's Steve Reed points out that it's impossible to remember details for an event involving Mandelson's alleged donations 20 years ago. And yet when it comes to unrecorded remarks allegedly said by Nigel Farage 40 years ago, Labour insists Farage must recall all details and apologise. Anyone else see the problem here? Well, I see the problem, Mark, because the scandal that Mandelson is embroiled in, which has a sexual and indeed financial and political dimension, is something that's, I would argue, being underreported in the media. And if it was a Conservative politician or, God forbid, a Reform UK MP, you'd never hear the end of it. Ben in London, good morning, Mark and Rafe. Could those photos that you showed with Andrew and a young lady lying on the floor not be Andrew and the young lady being taught first aid and putting a patient in the recovery position? I'm not trying to make excuses for Andrew, but it's possible. Well, Ben, you're right to point that out, that Andrew denies any allegations made against him. He's been found guilty of no crimes. And we do have a tradition in this country, until Labour scrap jury trials, which is innocent until proven guilty. Linda says, good morning, Mark. I think that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor should get his comeuppance and go to America. However, why should the Yanks get Andrew? They didn't cooperate with us and give us Anne Secoulis, who did actually commit a criminal offence by killing Harry Dunn on his motorbike. It's interesting, that's a fair point, isn't it? It's a special relationship with America until it doesn't suit them. Steve says, Mark, 2 questions about this Mandelson business. Who was taking all these photographs and for what purpose? Seems a rather strange thing to do in a private environment. Let's get to our next story, and it's one of the big questions of the day. I'm going to ask you, should we call time on benefits Britain? Are you, as a taxpayer, being scammed? Because what about this? Britain, according to the Telegraph, is set to become the biggest spender on benefits in the G7 within a few years. Analysis by the Telegraph of Office for Budget Responsibility data shows the UK is on track now to spend 2.2% of GDP on incapacity and disability benefits towards the end of the decade. The latest internationally comparable figures from the OECD suggest that this would be by far the highest of any G7 nation. So, Rafe Heidelman-Koo, are my viewers and listeners being scammed?
Absolutely. I mean, the way to look at it like this, today, there are more people under the age of 25 taking sick days than people over 50 take sick days. Something has gone seriously wrong in this country, and of course a huge amount of this is because of alleged mental health issues. Now look, I always cite Sweden here. Sweden is one of the world's best countries to live in, higher standards of living. Swedish children have one of the most privileged lives in the world, but Swedish children routinely rank amongst the most depressed in the world. Why is that? It's because they're constantly asked to rate their mental health on the scale of 1 to 10. So if you're constantly telling people to focus on their mental health, of course they're going to become obsessed by it, and they're going to reinterpret what is simply a bad day or being in a bad mood as being legitimate depression. And I'm afraid we've got examples like that coming up time and time again. And we're being bankrupted by it, you know? I mean, welfare is done by consent. The British public say, right, you work, but when you really need this, we will be there to help you. Once you erode that trust and people think this is actually a career choice that you've made, then support for welfare goes down. And also we know that with increased immigration and with increased diversity, support for welfare also declines. Scandinavia has the most generous welfare system in the world, but as immigration increases, they begin to lose faith in the welfare system. Why? Because it's human nature. All the evidence shows people are more willing to pay taxes for welfare for people who are like themselves. And what we've done is...
And by the way, when you say like themselves, are people with a work ethic that actually work full-time, because what happens with, I'm afraid, you know, a lot of immigration, a high percentage of people that do come into a country do not work. And that's the big headache, and that's the conflict point.
And as I've said, you know, benefits, citizenship should bring benefits. You should not be getting any welfare benefits if you're not a British citizen. And even if you've paid in, it doesn't matter. That's the price of living in this country. After 15 years, get your citizenship, then you are entitled to these sorts of things. But to put this into context, you know, we've had so much talk about NATO spending, the British government increasing GDP percentages spent on defence. Starmer has increased benefits by more than the defence budget. And we've just had this lifting of the, you know, having this lifting of the two-child benefit cap. That would more than do away with the need to you could double the cost of the courts and prison services in this country, you know, getting rid of the need to do away with jury trials if you simply put that cap back in place.
Well, it is 6:44. This is the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. And next up, is the countryside racist?
Across the UK, on on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, happy Monday, one and all. Wakey, wakey, rise and shine. This is Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle for one day only. Lovely to have your company. And should we call time on Benefits Britain? Given two shocking statistics, it's been revealed that a quarter of people, 25% of the population, would be better off on benefits than working, which is surely a perverse disincentive to work. And the Telegraph reports Sick Britain to hand out the most benefits in the entire G7. I don't think those that govern us got the memo that we are broke and that we've got a deficit and that more is going out than coming in. You understand that with your own finances, but those that govern us just don't get it. They think that we can live on the never, never indefinitely. Let me tell you, that doesn't end well. I would offer you Greece as an example, and we would be, by the way, Greece times 100. This from Jeff, who says, good morning, Mark. I'm a DWP work coach. The genuine benefits are not the problem. It's fraud that needs to be smashed. If you could see the money that we pay out to people, you would be demanding action. More than half of the claimants, says Jeff, more than half of the claimants are working cash in hand, not declaring the income and receiving universal credit and housing costs on top of many thousands of pounds in cash in hand work. We're basically powerless. So what they're getting, Jeff tells me, they're getting cash in hand for working in the black economy, not declaring that cash. They're getting universal credit and they're getting housing benefit as well. I suppose by my calculations, that means that they're probably clearing 70, 80 grand a year with the cash in hand plus the state handouts. Quite extraordinary. He goes on to say we're basically powerless. Our fraud department don't look at anything unless it's over the £10,000 threshold. Millions of people are claiming universal credit whilst working for cash as cleaners, gardeners, plasterers, mechanics, labourers, car washers, etc., etc. It's outrageous, and the Department for Work and Pension staff are powerless to do anything. We're drowning in universal credit payments. I regularly see claims of over £4 grand a month. Now, just to put that in context, if you've got an actual job, you'd need to earn £7 grand to clear £4 grand after tax. So you'd need to be on, by my swift calculations, £84,000 to match what some people are getting on benefits. Let that sink in. He said it's utter madness. Love you loads, Jeff from up north. Well, Jeff, loving you straight back, and thank you for the kind words. But listen, let's get on to our next story. Rafe Hadel-Manku, historian and commentator. Countryside to become less white in rural diversity drive. The British countryside will be made into a less white environment under nationwide diversity plans. Officials in rural areas, including the Chilterns and the Cotswolds, have pledged to attract more minorities under plans drawn up by DEFRA. The plans follow DEFRA Commission reports that claimed the countryside would become irrelevant in a multicultural society as it was a white environment principally enjoyed by the white middle class. So is the countryside racist?
Look, let's be clear here. These diversity zealots don't care about ethnic minorities at all. They are far left ideologues. You need to understand we are a post-revolutionary society. Our institutions have been captured by people like this who have a visceral hatred for Britain and for the West. We have to call it out for what it is. The British people are in a long war of attrition now, which seeks to undermine everything that you think of about Britain as being one of the great assets of this country. We're told our history is racist, our culture is racist, our heroes are racist. Now even the countryside is racist because it doesn't have enough white people in it. And why are they going after the countryside? Because the countryside is the quintessential notion of what it means to be British. If you ask an Englishman or a Scotsman or a Welshman or a Northern Irishman, what does it mean to be from your country? They'll think of their pastoral landscape or the Highlands. It's a fundamental aspect of British culture, and that's why they're going after it. Of course, you're never seeing anything on the reverse. There's no efforts made to bring white people into Blackburn or to Burnley or to Bradford, are there? This is about attacking something which epitomises to many people the very essence of what it means to be British.
Which is why I would argue this government are quite comfortable with 8 pubs closing every day, because they represent the traditions of this country and of our culture. You know, pubs are not just a hospitality venue and part of the economy, which employs a lot of young people, they are a cultural touchstone. They are, you know, just a historical monument to our past, which Labour, I think, is quite happy to dispose of.
And they're doing everything they can. Look, it's called a public house. The idea was at the end of your street, because your house was too small, you would have a place where the whole community could gather. It was an extension of your living room. It's where many great political movements started up as well. And what do we have? Not only do we have them trying to nickel and dime pubs to death, but also, of course, the banter Stasi coming in to try to monitor any speech that's taking place there, lest an employee get offended by conversations that you're having. For heaven's sake, some of our great conspiracies, you know, the Guy Fawkes and so forth, have happened in pubs. This really is a full-out war on one of the great institutions of British life, you know, and then, of course, you have the countryside as well. This is all part and parcel for trying to essentially undermine all those things that we built up in this country and insert into it a new ideology, new messaging, and a new culture.
Well, indeed, and what's happened is the countryside is just that part of the country which has not been inflicted with the cult of multiculturalism.
Yeah, and, you know, all the time, every week...
It's unfinished business for the radical left, isn't it?
You know, barely a week goes past when you don't have a mayor or police commissioner saying diversity is our greatest strength. Well, I've delivered lectures on this. There is no evidence whatsoever. On the contrary, diversity, when you combine it with mass immigration, is our greatest weakness, arguably.
Well, yeah.
The Danes did a study of all 87 studies on this. Diversity is a weakness. It's not a strength. It makes us more introverted. We stay at home more. We don't participate in community ventures very much. We don't volunteer. We mistrust other people. When our local areas begin to deteriorate because we're not involved in what's happening around us. All the evidence shows this. The countryside is one of the last bastions against that, and they want to foist that upon those areas as well.
Well, that's right, and there's a difference between sensible immigration, in which people, which used to happen, of course, throughout history and until really the late 90s, when you had legal net migration of 20 to 50,000 people a year, which is now how many come illegally. And it was a slow process. It was integrated, and it was people who had a right to come to this country or claimed to come to this country who would contribute and become British. And that project has completely changed now, and that contract with the public has changed, and no one voted for it.
Exactly. The British people were never asked about this. The British people were asked about Brexit. We got a referendum on that. I'm sorry, mass immigration has been the greatest act of harm in this nation's story, far more consequential than the cost of fighting the Second World War. Yet the British people were never consulted on this. And of course, we can see the effect that it's had on this nation. We've had more immigration to this country in the last 20 years than the last 2,000 years combined. No culture can sustain such rapid demographic change. Where we were in the 80s and 90s with limited amounts of diversity was great. We were functioning extremely well. And back then, you know, you and I may remember people like Daley Thompson or Tessa Sanderson, Linford Christie. No one saw them through the prism of race. They were equally British. Now, because of the world we're in, we see everything through the prism of race, and that's a direct consequence of mass immigration and the far-left ideology which dictates that our countryside is somehow racist.
Also, are these people not racist? Because they're the ones with a clipboard in the countryside counting black people.
They're fundamentally racist.
That's ultimately what it is. If you say that the countryside is too white, it means you've gone around with a clipboard and tried to write down how many people of colour you've seen today.
These people wake up and think, what is racist in the world today? They see everything through the prism of race. Is that not the definition of racism right there?
Well, it would be if you asked Martin Luther King.
Yes, exactly. Judging somebody by the content of their character, not by the colour of their skin.
What about the Daily Express? PM wants to rewind freedom Brexit gave us. A brilliant campaign by the Express, by the way. I wholeheartedly support it. And it's to remind those who govern us that we chose to leave that bloc in 2016, and we don't want Brexit to be reversed by 1,000 slices, which looks like what's going to happen under this government, and a Prime Minister who detests our fresh newfound independence.
Well, we've known that he's never respected the ballot box, has he? Because the first thing he did once Brexit was secured was try to get a second referendum to reverse that. This is the long-term gain. We're now told, of course, that the government also wants to commit us to a £130 billion EU defence fund to get us back into the talons of Brussels. It has to be resisted. The British people spoke. in a once-in-a-lifetime event, let alone once-in-a-generation event, I would say, and that must be respected.
Well, that's right. And do you know something? I'm a little bit surprised by the Brexiteers and those on the political right for not talking up Brexit. And I say that as somebody that voted Remain. Now, the reason why I voted Remain all those years ago is because I was concerned about short to medium-term economic disruption. I just thought we've got enough problems. I really don't want to have that short-term pain. I never thought that Brexit was a problem in principle. I just thought, do we really want to dent economic growth and have all of that friction on trade for 5 to 10 years? Then I thought, nah, I'll skip it. Anyway, I think it was a mistake. If I had my time again, I would have voted Brexit. I want to thank everyone listening to and watching the show that did. And we know it's not perfect, but we're a sovereign nation. Here's a perfect example of why Brexit was the right thing to do. Just this week, Spain have announced that they've granted citizenship to 500,000 illegal immigrants. That's 500,000 people. Now, those people will have free movement across Europe. And because of Brexit, we can stop those people at the border. Thank God we're out.
Yes, well, as long as we can stop those people at the border, that's the thing.
Well, that's the idea.
I've been a Brexiteer since 1992 when I was 16, and Brexit wasn't even a term. But we have been betrayed over Brexit, because the whole point, we know people voted not so much on the economics or the sovereignty issue, they voted to take back control of our borders, and Boris Johnson deliberately misinterpreted take back control to allowing the Boris wave of migrants to come in.
Here is Nick on migrant camps. Voice note, take it away.
You're talking about putting up fences around army barracks. Well, when I was in East Anglia, there was a barracks, and this is over the years when they were coming in back of lorries and containers. They put them in this army barracks round about Cambridge area, and they went to court, I think, and they said they were felt like prisoners in the camp, and so the government took down the fencing so they could walk in and out freely. But the fencing what was up was to stop people getting in at the time when it was a barracks. But they took it all down to let them walk around freely.
Brilliant, thank you, Nick. My deep thanks to the historian and commentator Rafe Hadel-Manku. Look after yourself, Hadel, because you are an important dropper of truth bombs in this country and on this network, and we'll catch up very soon. So much to come in the next hour. A political crisis engulfing the Prime Minister, a crisis of his own making, as the architect of the new Labour project stands accused of financial and sexual impropriety. You couldn't make it up. Is the countryside racist? And should we call time on Benefits Britain? This is Talk Breakfast.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
.702, happy Monday one and all. Mark Dolan with you for one day only. The brilliant Jeremy Kyle back tomorrow at 6 a.m. So much to get through. Breaking this morning, a fresh crisis for Sir Keir Starmer as the man that he appointed British ambassador to the United States, the architect of the New Labour project, Peter Mandelson, stands accused of receiving thousands of pounds from disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. And the scandal isn't just about money, with a photograph emerging of the former business secretary under Gordon Brown standing half naked in his underpants alongside a woman in a shower robe. This appears to be an example of sleaze as well as financial impropriety. Meanwhile, the Epstein files reveal that Mandelson lobbied his own government to scrap a planned tax on bankers' bonuses, reportedly to help his friend Jeffrey. Now, at 7:03 on a Monday morning, can you imagine if this scandal was focused on a Conservative politician or a sitting Reform MP? There would be uproar. You'd never hear the end of it. But as the Prime Minister urges Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to give evidence to US Congress, why the wall of silence from Mandelson and these Labour apparatchiks? Is this an example of Starmer's political misjudgment? This is a guy that was appointed the ambassador to the United States when it was quite clear the guy's a wrong-un. So the sharks are circling for Mandelson, but it's not just that. What about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor with a shocking new development? This reported in the Daily Mail newspaper. Andrew in new Epstein legal threat. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor faces a new legal threat after a second woman alleged that Jeffrey Epstein flew her to Britain for sex and that she had tea at Buckingham Palace afterwards. Should Andrew Mountbatten Windsor be in prison? And as it's revealed, a quarter of Brits will be better off not working and going on benefits. The UK is set to become the biggest spender on benefits in the whole of the G7 within the next 5 years. So should we call time on benefits, Britain? Oh, and is the countryside racist? This is Talk Breakfast. Now, my phone number is 03444991000. Safira is taking your calls. I want your opinions across a range of issues. My job is to get your views on the national television and radio airwaves. You can hear us on DAB+, in-app and online, or you can watch the show. Just head to YouTube and search Talk and up we pop. Let's get reaction now to the big stories of the day with the former Commons Deputy Speaker, Nigel Evans. Good morning, Nigel.
Morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well, and it's terrific to see you. I'm in a better mood than Peter Mandelson, who stands accused of sexual and financial impropriety. Front page of the Daily Telegraph. Mandelson faces order for Epstein evidence, and he's photographed in his Y-fronts with a woman, an unnamed woman, in a shower robe. What happened to Tory sleaze? It looks like Labour are just as good at it.
I'm just wondering, scratching my head, Mark, was he posing for that photograph? Somebody must have taken the photograph. I mean, where's that photograph come from? It's quite remarkable to see that photograph being splashed. I mean, this is part of the revelations that's come from the Epstein files, which is the charity that keeps on giving, because on Friday, 3 million more pages of evidence has been revealed, including videos as well. And it's just quite spectacular what's coming out, including all this stuff about Peter Mandelson, who is the former ambassador from Britain to the United States. And of course, the emphasis is now shifting away from Mandelson basically onto Starmer, because yesterday, Peter Mandelson actually resigned from the Labour Party, which is quite spectacular, because I suspect Peter, and I've known Peter Mandelson for, it must be 50 years, because I joined the Tory Party when I was 17, and when I was 21, I went to Cuba as part of the World Youth Festival representing Swansea University, and Peter Mandelson was leader of the delegation. And so Peter was a strong member of the Labour Party in those days, and for him to actually resign is a spectacular thing for him to do yesterday. But now emphasis is going to shift to Keir Starmer, asking him basically, what did he know, when did he know it, and why did he appoint Peter to the ambassadorship or to the United States if he knew that, as you said, he's a wrong 'un?
Well, most definitely. I mean, the rap sheet is as long as the River Nile. You've got the Jeffrey Robinson loan scandal in '98, when he resigned as Trade and Industry Secretary after it emerged he'd taken a large loan from a fellow minister, Jeffrey Robinson, and had not declared it in the MP's Register of Interests. He hadn't told his mortgage company either. The Hinduja passport affair. The list goes on, links to Epstein, and also what was known as Mandelson Gate, right? As business secretary, Mandelson faced a major storm after holidaying on a yacht with a Russian oligarch at a time when it was quite compromising in regard to international relations and our diplomatic relationship with Russia. That the guy has got such a history of corruption and of being someone that's not fit for high office, and yet Starmer appoints him to one of the most prestigious roles in diplomacy, which is UK ambassador to Washington.
Yeah, it is quite spectacular. And it's also now revealed, Mark, that he's likely not to seek his seat back in the House of Lords as well. But I've been reading the papers today, and it is suggested that Peter Mandelson will not be... somebody from the Labour Party, a Labour Member of Parliament, has actually written to the Standards Committee in the House of Lords asking him to be investigated. So it seems to me as if this isn't going anywhere. And also, you can't have Keir Starmer as Prime Minister saying to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor that he should now go and give evidence in the United States without him actually also saying that Peter Mandelson should do likewise. So this story is certainly not going to go away. And it's getting bigger because this thing about the files revealing that he's been given, Peter Mandelson was given $75,000 by Epstein. Peter is saying that he's got no evidence that actually took place. And he's going to look into it. This is one of the reasons why he's now resigned from the Labour Party, in order for him to pay attention towards that. Well, I've got to say, Mark, I don't know about you, but if somebody had given me $75,000, I'd remember it.
Well, indeed, it's my personal view that he's playing for time. This is a master of political public relations, and he's hoping that this can, some of the heat can come out of this if he delays things and slows the whole process down, kills the story. Nigel, let's discuss the Prime Minister, because yesterday on the show we reported that his former deputy and the former housing minister, Angela Rayner, has amassed a £1 million war chest to unseat him as PM. Do you think there's a chance that MPs will move against Starmer before May?
I don't think before May, but I think certainly straight afterwards, because it seems to me as if what's going to happen is that there's two things. The two big things, Mark. One is the Gorton and Denton by-election. Now, this would have been a safe seat in any other circumstances, but Keir Starmer is more unpopular than Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, as we said earlier on. And it seems to me as if the Labour Party are due to lose that by-election, whatever happens. And then in May, we've got the local elections, those local elections that Keir Starmer is allowing to take place, because, as you know, he's cancelled them in 29 other local authorities. That's 4.5 million British people are now being denied the vote in local elections in May. But they will go ahead in some local authorities, and they're going to go ahead in the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Assembly. And all the indicators are it's going to be a disaster. Now, if you're one of these new Labour members of Parliament who got elected in 2024 and you rather like the job, then you're looking at the person who is going to be responsible for you perhaps losing that job in 2 years' time. Mark, what are you going to do? You're going to kill Keir Starmer as leader of your party. They're going to move pretty quickly afterwards. But I don't know who's going to be more popular than Keir Starmer, because there's another poll in the papers today that says Wes Streeting is one of those who clearly wants the job, that he's less popular than Keir Starmer. I mean, there again, I'm scratching my head as to work out why people think that somehow or other anybody is less popular than the current holder of the keys at number 10.
Well, there's a great misunderstanding that somehow the Labour Party care about the public and what we think, what voters think, what taxpayers think. The constituency in the event of a leadership election will be the Labour members and those very left-wing backbenchers, the kind of left-wing backbenchers who have thwarted the government's efforts to curtail the benefits bill, particularly in relation to disability benefits. So it's a left-wing electorate, which surely means that all roads lead to Angela Rayner should Starmer be unseated.
It does appear, and this £1 million backing that she's been given as well is quite spectacular. She's going to use that money to promote herself, but I think she still hasn't paid the money that she's owing to
40 grand.
It's 40 grand, and as I understand it, she still hasn't paid the money. So I don't see how somebody who is tainted in that way somehow or other is going to be more popular than Keir Starmer. We know Keir Starmer is unpopular. We know from the day he took control, from taking all those free clothes from Lord Ali to tickets for Taylor Swift, through to taking money off pensioners in winter payments, through to heaping extra costs on people on national insurance, employees' national insurance, and all that sort of stuff, unemployment going up, not dealing with the immigration crisis into the country. And today's news again, Mark, that people who have entered the United Kingdom illegally are now going to end up in brand new council houses. So I knew when I was a Member of Parliament, I used to get people sitting opposite me in surgery saying, Mr. Evans, is there any chance we could get a council house? And there's a long list of British people who want to get on the housing ladder via getting a council house. And if you're told, I'm terribly sorry, you're now at the bottom of the list because we've got some illegal immigrants that have come in and we're going to give them your council houses. I mean, it won't be long before these people who've entered the United Kingdom illegally will have a right to buy those council houses as well. I mean, you couldn't make it up, Mark.
You really could.
But one thing is absolutely certain, Keir Starmer is on the ropes, and whether it's going to be Angela Rayner, Wes Streeting, Darren Jones, they're all going to be gunning for him post-May.
And retired police detective Charlotte Cadden has been chosen as the Conservative Party candidate for the aforementioned Gorton and Denton by-election. She was a police officer for 30 years in Greater Manchester Police and the Met Police. She wanted a proper inquiry on grooming gangs, and she'd operated to basically get rid of the carbon tax as well. A strong candidate, but she hasn't got a cat's chance in hell of winning this, has she?
It's going to be incredibly difficult. I fought 2 by-elections in my political career, Mark. One was Pontypridd in 1989 and one was Ribble Valley. Now, one I knew I had no chance in, and I went in to the Pontypridd by-election in 2nd place and came out in 3rd place. The Labour Party did win that particular by-election. And the Ribble Valley, I went in and it was the 13th safest Conservative seat in the country, and I lost. So it's going to be pretty tough. But eyes won't be on the Tory party. The whole eyes of the country will be on the Labour Party, and where are they going to be? Under Andrew Gwynn, who was the former Labour Member of Parliament, they gained over 50% of the vote. And for them to lose this particular safe Labour seat in the northwest of England, whether it's to Reform, whether it's to the Greens, or whoever wins that seat, it's going to be an absolute disaster. All the predictions are that the Labour Party, not only will they lose the seat, they're going to come 3rd. I mean, that's going to be an absolute disaster. It's already been turned into a referendum on Keir Starmer, and he is now down as one of the most unpopular prime ministers that the country's ever had. His current polling is round about 11%. I mean, it is an absolute disaster. Things keep going wrong for him. And you started the programme, Mark, by saying another fresh crisis for Keir Starmer with Peter Mandelson. And it is. It's every day is another fresh crisis for Keir Starmer.
Yes, he's the broken clock that's even wrong twice a day. Nigel, briefly, if you can, Starmer gone by Christmas?
Without an absolute doubt, I think they're going to move straight after May, as soon as the May elections are over. Wow. I mean, the clock is ticking, as Michel Barnier once famously said about us trying to leave the European Union. Yeah, the clock is ticking, and the clock is ticking down very, very quickly on Keir Starmer. I mean, people are already choosing candidates for the next general election. The next general election will only be a couple of years away at most. But Mark, the big thing is, and if they do get rid of Keir Starmer, is the necessity for them to go for an early general election irresistible, because they may be coming forward with policies that were not contained in the Labour manifesto. And if that's the case, then it's about time the British people were asked again, who do you want to hold the keys to number 10?
Nigel, always a treat to have you on the show. Have an excellent Monday. Nigel Evans is the former Commons Deputy Speaker, former Conservative MP, of course. Your reaction, 0344 499 1000. Starmer gone by Christmas. Is that even good news? Be careful what you wish for, folks. The Ginger Growler is back. Angela Rayner, she's got £1 million in the bank. A lot of that will be union money. They'll be wanting their pound of flesh if she gets into number 10. Now, shocking statistic, a quarter of Brits would be better off on benefits than working, with a news story today, Sick Britain to hand out the most benefits in the entire G7. David is in Gloucestershire. Good morning, David.
Just an idea, £1 million for a panel show involving Fergie, Andrew and Mandelson. That would be TV gold.
Wouldn't that be brilliant? Deal or no deal? I love it.
Something like that.
Yeah, well, it is a game. It's a game to these people, isn't it?
I know. But anyway, back to the
Love
real,
that.
well, back to the truth or whatever. Benefits. The reason these immigrants get so much money is very, very simple. That the people that make the decisions, the civil service, live on $150,000 a year. They've got a gold-plated pension. They live in a townhouse in the middle of London. So they think they're giving these people pitiful amounts of money. But the truth is they're giving these people lottery-style wins from the countries they're coming from. We know it. People in the real world, it's lottery money for the people that live in the real world. But they don't see it like that.
No, I mean, it is astonishing, really, that people that come to this country as legal immigrants get benefits more or less straight away. This is a massive racket. That loophole should have been closed years ago.
Yeah, and I mean, I do got to pick you up on one little point. You keep on about these immigrants from Spain. Don't you think they might come in under Starmer's youth mobility scheme?
Well, I mean, it could be a Trojan horse for that, couldn't it? It's very, very true. I mean, what does that decision by the Spanish government of granting citizenship to 500,000 illegal immigrants, what does that tell us about the benefits of Brexit?
Sorry?
Do you think that it proves that it's good that we're out, that these people who are granted citizenship by an incredibly woke left-wing socialist government in Spain won't be able to come here because we've actually not got free movement?
I think they will, though, Mark. That's what's worrying. That's what I think. I think you'll be. I'm sorry, you and your. I can't think of the chap's name now.
Rafe.
Rafe. But you were saying, they won't be able to come. I think they will because they'll come under Starmer's youth mobility scheme. They'll come. That's what it's all about. So that Spain will make them citizens, and then they'll all be under 25. And Starmer will say, look, these people are coming in on the youth mobility scheme. There's nothing we can do about it.
Well, this is true. I mean, it could definitely. I mean, the numbers for the youth mobility scheme look to be capped at a certain number of thousand. But I do agree, David, the optics of it are not great. Enjoyed your call. Call me again soon. So much more to get through. Next up, should Andrew Mountbatten Windsor be in jail? 7:21. This is Talk Breakfast.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
"7:23, this is Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle, who is back tomorrow, and a very, very busy couple of hours we have ahead. An extraordinary story in the Telegraph. Countryside to become less white in rural diversity drive. Well, I've got a reaction here from Martin in Bristol, who says, "Good morning, Mark. Regarding the countryside not having enough non-white people in. Well, the countryside, it's there. All that green stuff, right? You can just go. It's our green and pleasant land. Nothing stopping anyone going there. If you want to go there, you can go. If you don't want to go, you don't have to. Get a Barber jacket and a cockapoo and enjoy fresh air and the peace. Go on. There's nothing stopping anyone." Leslie in Norfolk says, regarding Benefits Britain, "I'm appalled by people on benefits getting more than hard workers and people have contributed all their lives. This should be addressed ASAP." Well, it's a shocking statistic. Sick Britain to hand out the most benefits in the G7. We'll get back to that scandal in just a moment. Do we call time on the welfare state and at least its worst excesses? Now, the US president says that the latest Epstein files data drop exonerates him. Has Donald dodged a bullet? I'm delighted to welcome Freddie Gray, the deputy and US editor of The Spectator. Good morning, Freddie.
Good morning, Mark. Lovely to be with you.
Now, there was some hesitation on the part of Donald Trump to release these Epstein files, having been elected in November of last year. Now that a lot of them are out, does he look like he's home and hosed?
Well, I mean, the Epstein story is such a weird mystery to everyone that it's very hard to say. I think undoubtedly they did delay on releasing these files, and the probable reason for that is that Donald Trump's name appears in them so often. But a lot of people around him advised him to release them nonetheless and to release them in full. Whether we can say he's exonerated by them, he certainly appears to have been closer friends with Jeffrey Epstein than he has made out. But has he done anything particularly wrong or egregious other than going to parties with a rather disgusting person? No, it seems not.
No, and of course he'd be in good company on that one with the likes of Bill Clinton having been a regular on the so-called Lolita Express, the private jet belonging to Epstein, Richard Branson and many others.
Well, I think the fascinating thing about these emails in a kind of lurid way is the way they reveal the elite at its absolute peak, the sort of Blairite, Clintonite elite, in the sort of phase after they were immediately in power, so the 2000s, and the sheer arrogance with which they approach life. They have unbelievable riches, they have unbelievable power, unbelievable connections, and you see what Epstein did. I mean, he essentially just mediated between people and tried to influence. We see this with Mandelson now. We tried to influence bankers' bonuses in Britain. And you do get this sense of a kind of world that is now gone, but a world where they had just such incredible power. They could change government policy while partying, possibly in illicit ways. And I mean, for them, it looked like a really lovely, fun time. But for us now, it looks a bit sordid and wrong.
Most definitely. And it puts paid, doesn't it, Freddie, to the idea that sleaze is exclusive to Conservative politicians.
No, well, exactly. Sleaze is a bipartisan business. I mean, I think it's interesting that, I think we do need to be a little bit careful. Now, even with Mandelson, who obviously got far too overexcited about his friendship with Epstein, there are no actual allegations of sexual impropriety in relation to Mandelson. So just because someone's pictured with Epstein doesn't necessarily mean we can call him a creep, although people have a lot of fun doing so.
Most definitely. Now, of course, the great sell of the MAGA movement pre the US elections was that Trump would drop all of that Epstein data, that he would publish the Epstein files. There were quite detailed allegations about Trump's interactions with young women, which were released, then redacted. The president is mentioned more than 3,000 times in the latest files. Many Trump supporters were disappointed when he hesitated to publish all of the Epstein data. Why do you think he did hesitate and row back on an election promise?
Well, I think probably it's because Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, or Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, said to him, look, your name appears in this a lot more than we thought. That's a probable cause. I have no evidence of that, and I don't think anyone does, aside from the three people involved. I strongly suspect it's that. It could also be that there is somebody in those files that Donald Trump wanted to protect. There's been a lot of speculation about that. I really think it was just a misjudgment, and they thought they could bury it. They thought they could just let it go for a while. And they forgot what a big neuralgic issue this is for their base, i.e. their supporters. And they found out the hard way. It's not.
Is there any point, Freddie, in Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor or Peter Mandelson giving evidence to US Congress, or is that an effective kangaroo court?
I think there probably is a point. I mean, we need to get to the bottom of which laws were broken and how. There are still mysteries of the extent of Epstein's abuse. So no, I think they probably, if they were called by any judicial body, they should answer it. But there is a slight danger of everyone's just endlessly recycling the same story over and again, and the same accusers. Many of whom now have either withdrawn or are no longer have been debunked as accusers. I mean, the Trump stuff in the latest files, this is recycled stuff from an accuser that has never even been known, an anonymous accuser alleging that she met Trump. She doesn't even allege that Trump asked her to do anything. She then alleges that Epstein asked her to massage Prince Andrew. It's all very, very vague and nobody quite knows. So I do think we're in danger of recycling gossip endlessly.
Freddie, a deep pleasure to have you on the show. Look forward to catching up soon. Freddie Gray is the deputy and US editor of The Spectator, which I believe is the oldest political periodical in the world. Always a great read. Let's take a call now. Ginny is in Northumberland. And Ginny, it's quite extraordinary, isn't it? Sick Britain to hand out the most benefits in the entire G7. Many of the people on these benefits have not paid into the system because they are immigrants. Your reaction?
Well, Matt, I talked to your researchers about that just as a comment because an earlier caller, actually, it was his point, not mine.
Yeah.
But my point was regarding the immigrants because I was listening to you and Rafe discussing, and Rafe said, which is fantastic, actually. And he mentioned something about he would rather see them housed on golf courses rather than closer to villages and towns.
Yes.
But the point is, why are we discussing where to house them? They shouldn't be here. Full stop. I'm from Israel originally, and I lived here now for nearly 40 years. I was in the Israeli army, as all my siblings, my nieces and nephews are still in the army. And for Britain to tell Israel how to defend itself, and yet they are escorting this army of who knows what, housing them, paying them. And then another point to this is they don't just contain them in one place. They are now, with taxes on our expense, transfer them all over the country. In no time at all, they will have the right to vote. And when they vote, they'll vote for Muslim MPs, no doubt. And Israel, let me tell you, will be a Jewish state for years and years to come, and Britain will be a Muslim state. It's dangerous. I remember Noah Tishby. She's a fantastic Israeli actress, and she's now giving talks. And 2 years ago, after October 7, she was speaking in America in congresses, and she said, "Wake up, you are being played."
Ginny, what would you say to those that argue the majority of British Muslims are peace-loving and very much proud patriots of this country?
But are they? They live... yes, there is them. But what I say is that's beside the point. at the moment, because if they are peaceful Muslims, welcome. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a huge problem, dangerous problem. There is a lot of big communities in Birmingham and so on that they are now ruling their own community.
And ruling the police, of course, influencing the police, as we saw with the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans who were not able to come to Birmingham to watch a football match, Ginny.
Correct. But that's only show them up. Israel, that's just, if that's the way you conduct yourselves, let everybody see and take their own consequence, make their own assumptions about that. But how can they? Israel was defending itself and did awful things to civilians because they couldn't avoid it. And yet in this country they are practicing Sharia law and FGM. Is that okay?
Indeed, and marching in support of Hamas every weekend on the so-called peace marches. Ginny, thank you for an important call. Please do so again soon. 0344 499 1000. Ginny's quite right. She talks about, we're having a conversation where we house these people. Hotels, army training camps, brand new social housing. They shouldn't be here in the first place. We have to stop the supply. And it's up to 1,000 people a day. And I think the public would accept, OK, if there's no more boats, so we will deal with the problem we've got now. But every day the numbers grow, and it could be 1/3 in the course of this parliament. All thanks to our spineless Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. So much more to come. Is the countryside racist? This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It's 7:36 on a Monday morning. This from Leslie in Norfolk. Mark, I'm appalled by people on benefits getting more than hard workers and people who've contributed all their lives. This has got to be addressed ASAP. Well, should we call time on the excesses of benefits Britain? Who better to ask than the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, Sir Mel Stride. Good morning, Sir Mel.
Good morning, Mark.
Welcome to Talk Breakfast. Pleasure to have you on the programme. A shocking statistic, actually. Well, over the last 24 hours, we reported on this show, Sir Mel, that a quarter of working Brits would be statistically better off if they were on benefits than worked. And today, the Telegraph report that Sick Britain is to hand out the most benefits in the entire G7. We need to get a grip on this, don't we?
Absolutely, and when we were in government, that is precisely what we were doing. In fact, we brought through reforms to something called the Work Capability Assessment, which is the gateway onto these long-term sickness and disability benefits, that the Office for Budget Responsibility said would mean almost 500,000 fewer people going onto those benefits and saving billions of pounds. What did Labour do when they got into power? they scrapped it as one of the first things on coming to office, and that's the wrong approach. We need to be getting people off benefits, into work, and with the money that we save as a consequence, bearing down on our debt and cutting taxes so we can get the economy moving.
The welfare system used to be a safety net, didn't it, Sir Mel? It's a long way away from that now. It's become a lifestyle choice for too many.
It's reached the stage where we have far too many, particularly people with mild mental health conditions, anxiety, mild depression, ADHD, and so on, who are going on to these benefits. And that is the area where a lot of reform is required. But as I say, that is precisely what we were doing in office. We were about to be seeing the fruits of that, and the Labour Party scrapped that, tried their own welfare reforms, of course, which they then failed to get past their backbenchers. So I'm afraid that's why we're still hearing these stories. We need proper grip, proper plan to get on top of that.
Having stress and anxiety shouldn't be, considered in the same category as somebody that's registered blind, deaf, or in a wheelchair.
Well, clearly, there are different situations that people are in, but what we know, particularly when it comes to things like anxiety, mild depression, those kind of conditions can actually be improved by having the routine of work, through going into work, having the pride of work, having that social interaction that work brings with it, those conversations at the water cooler and so on. That's actually good for people's longer-term mental health. Parking people on benefits, never to go back into the workforce, is the worst thing that you can do in the case of many of these people. So that's yet another reason, apart from the purely economic reason, as to why we should be getting people off benefits and into work.
Well, Sir Mel, as you're aware, the cost of servicing our debt, the interest alone, is over £100 billion a year. We've got a deficit, more goes out than comes in on a daily basis. Should we scrap benefits for people on stress and anxiety, given that these are improvable decisions? They cannot be proved that you've got them.
Well, I think we need to be looking far more at professional diagnosis rather than self-diagnosis.
Yeah.
And that means making changes to the work capability assessment so that you seek and get clear professional documented evidence of conditions rather than people just expressing the way they feel about their current circumstances. So that's another area where the whole system really needs to be tightened up.
Now, Sir Mel, you've got some compelling ideas for the economy, but did the cult of welfarism not proliferate under the Conservatives' rule over 14 years?
Well, as I said earlier, we clearly going through COVID was something that didn't help when it came to those kind of issues. But we had brought forward clear reforms that we'd legislated for, which, as I say, the OBR had said would mean almost 500,000 fewer people going on to those benefits, several £1 billion worth of savings. We went into the last general election with a clear plan to save a further £12 billion per year from the welfare bill, and we were in the middle of consulting on something called personal independence payments and looking at getting that budget under control at the time of the general election. That consultation was interrupted by the general election. So we had a very clear direction of travel here, Mark, which would have seen this part of government spending coming under control, and of course we would, had we been elected, gone still further in that direction.
Now, Sir Mel, it looks like thousands of pounds were funneled into Peter Mandelson's bank account. Of course, he was friendly with Jeffrey Epstein. As the business secretary, he lobbied his cabinet colleagues to scrap bankers' bonus tax, reportedly in support of his friend Jeffrey Epstein. I thought it was the Tories that were such specialists in sleaze. That would certainly be your impression if you listened to the Prime Minister, who's been deafening in his silence about these allegations facing Lord Mandelson, the architect of New Labour.
Well, the Prime Minister has just shown absolutely no backbone on this issue, as he has on many, many others. It shouldn't have been left, frankly, for Peter Mandelson to take a decision to resign. The Prime Minister should have pushed Peter Mandelson out of the Labour Party some considerable time ago. And you're absolutely right. Look, we're looking at $75,000 back in 2003, 2004. Peter Mandelson says he has no recollection of any of that. But we need to get to the bottom of what has actually been going on. And what we need is not only Peter Mandelson to testify to Congress, if asked to do so, around the whole set of issues around Epstein, but equally we need a full independent inquiry now into exactly what has happened around the Mandelson-Epstein situation. You know, he was formerly our US ambassador. He ultimately got sacked from that. All these other things are now emerging and coming out of the woodwork. We need the full picture as to who knew what, when, and exactly what has been going on.
Meanwhile, Angela Rayner has reportedly amassed a war chest of £1 million, and there are claims that she's planning to unseat the Prime Minister potentially after the May elections. Do you think that Sir Keir Starmer will be gone by Christmas?
I think he's in a very, very tenuous situation. I mean, it's not just Angela Rayner, of course. You've got Wes Streeting on manoeuvres. You've got Andy Burnham, who was trying to come back into Parliament almost certainly for the similar kind of reasons. He seems to have an ever increasing queue of people lining up to try and challenge him for his job. So I don't know is the answer as to whether he'll survive, but his vulnerability is really bred of the weaknesses that we're discussing, the lack of grit, the lack of grip on the economy, the fact that, you know, we've now got unemployment at a 5-year high, we've got inflation too high, very sluggish growth, we've got businesses going to the wall left, right and centre, overburdened by taxation, and a complete failure to grip the welfare bill to get people off benefits into work so that we can provide some relief for those businesses rather than loading them up with additional taxes.
A pleasure to see you, Sir Mel. Have an excellent Monday. My thanks to Sir Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer. Do we need to call time on Benefits Britain? John is in the northeast. He's in Newcastle. Good morning, John.
Good morning to you. It's twice this weekend I've read about this 6 million. Once was off a television programme on the news where it says 6 million people who are on low income will receive £150 a year in the forthcoming future. And then, of course, yesterday I saw, I was at Sainsbury's and I saw on the front page about 6 million people again, that they would actually be better off on benefits than they are actually going to work, which is quite amazing. This country is in a real mess, and I can't understand the people of this country. You know, Conservative, Labour, with the help of Liberals on occasions, they failed this country. We need something different, irrespective of what it might be. We've got to have something different to what's going on, because that Houses of Parliament, to me, is a farce. And when you look at the House of Lords, the undemocratic House, then you wonder why the people say that, you know, that this country is the way it is. The undemocratic House of Lords, it shouldn't be. But it's quite a few things that need to be put right in this country.
Yeah.
And we need an election here in due course.
Well, we do. We need it ASAP. I mean, John, I would suggest, based on what you've said, I think that we need to look at the relationship between citizen and state. Wouldn't you say, John? I think that the relationship between citizen and state, which is a long-standing post-war consensus, has been usurped and violated by governments of all colours. And that what we need to go back to is a welfare state that's a safety net, not a lifestyle choice. We need to live in a society where we have order on the streets, where our borders are policed, and where those that govern us serve in the interests of the citizens of this country. And, John, we don't have that at the moment.
Oh, we certainly don't. After the decades that I've managed to get through, I think we're in a massive mess here, and it needs to be sorted out.
Can it be sorted?
Well, with a change, to be honest, I understand why people are going across to reform. People say, well, this shouldn't be the case, you know, reform's far too much to the right. I don't care if it's to the right, whatever it is, it's got to be given a chance, because this can't go on, going back from one Tory party to a Labour party, with the Liberals stuck in the middle. The Liberals have never been in power themselves for over 100 years, since around about 1920, the First World War. And, so I don't know why all these people exist. In an undemocratic House of Lords, we're told the mother of parliaments.
Yeah.
The mother of what parliament?
Well, it's a joke, isn't it? You couldn't make it up. John, brilliant call. Do call me again soon. John there thinks it's wild that 6 million people would be better off on benefits than working. By the way, is the countryside racist? This is Jay on a voice note.
Morning, fantastic show as always. The countryside to become less racist is actually started already. Long story short, a friend of mine lives in the Lake District. They're building the mega mosque. If you have a look online, you'll see it there. The census was done for the area and the votes, and there was actually no Muslims within a certain radius. Predominantly more in Glasgow, etc., which is miles away in Scotland.
Jay, you're absolutely right. I'm uncomfortable about that mosque in the Lake District, as I am about one in central London at the former Trocadero. Very, very strange indeed, and a deep concern. Listen, lots more to come. Should Prince Andrew, the artist formerly known as Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, should he be in jail? That's next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk Breakfast, Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle for one day only. Lovely to have your company. 7:52, and speaking exclusively to Talk Breakfast yesterday morning, Andrew Lowney, the man whose book entitled was The Beginning of the End for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, has suggested that the former Duke of York should be in prison for his activities in regard to Jeffrey Epstein, his friendship, his relationship with the disgraced financier. Let's get reaction from Talk's royal correspondent, Rupert Bell. Good morning, Rupert.
Good morning, Mark.
Most chillingly for the former Duke of York, Andrew Lowney, who's been investigating the former prince for 4 years in preparation for his book entitled, suggests that there's worse to come for Andrew.
Yes, I've spoken to Andrew about this particular subject, and I saw him give a lecture at the Stratford-upon-Avon Book Festival and caught up with him there, and he basically said there is still an awful lot of stuff potentially to come out. Now, should he be in jail? Well, if he's found guilty in a court of law, then yes, but it all seems to... And these pictures and latest allegations just are continuing. It's a sort of constant drip feed. And that's why you're getting people like the Prime Minister and other leading ministers suggesting that he does need to testify just to, on behalf of the victims, and maybe just to clear his name, because he, in his case, says, I've done nothing wrong. So it is an unseemly mess for him. And it just seems to me that the allegations seem to be getting worse and worse. Allegations that even in 2010, he had a relationship with a woman and took her around Buckingham Palace for tea and all sorts of subsequent allegations. So Andrew Lowney, he has his finger on the pulse when it comes to this particular subject. And Andrew has to now find a way of clearing his name, because it's only getting worse, it would seem, for him.
Well, indeed, if these allegations are proven true, that Epstein flew a young woman to the UK so that Andrew could have intimate relations with her, and that they had tea at Buckingham Palace following that intimate moment, well, the optics of that couldn't be worse for Andrew.
Well, the optics, all these allegations and some of the email allegations around you meeting up with someone back in the early noughties, and again, all seem to me to be very unseemly. And it behoves him to try, if he protests his innocence, then in many ways he now has to, because where else does he turn? Because he is exiled from the royal family. And every time there's more of these files released, there are more damning allegations, it would seem, against him. Just like there are against Lord Mandelson. He, I believe, has now handed in his notice as a member of the Labour Party. Yeah. All sorts of allegations. But what it is, once again, it does seem to me that Andrew is the big card they've got to play with the Epstein files whenever they're reduced. Although we've seen recently Bill Gates been coming out, allegations around his behaviour. But for Andrew, it does seem to be a constant drip feed. And I know for a fact, as you say, with Andrew Lowney, he does know a lot of what other things that may have gone on in Andrew's life that might cause him further complications. So it is an interesting time, but Andrew has got to grab this and sort it out if he wants to clear his name. But at the moment, I think that's going to be quite difficult for him.
So you think testifying to Congress would be the equivalent of Andrew having his day in court? It might be his only hope now.
Well, the trouble is, the last time he tried to clear his name with that Newsnight interview, it unravelled in an unseemly mess. And further, all these email allegations have shown how inconsistent that interview was. So it's going to be very difficult for him. And bearing in mind, he also paid £12 million, I think it was, to Virginia Giuffre to avoid having a civil court case. And as he said, he's always denied his allegations, but still paid $12 million or pounds, whichever the amount was, to her. So it just, which again, just sits so uneasy with people. You say, well, why are you giving that so much money if you're innocent? I know the royal family don't like being in court, except for Prince Harry. But this just seems to have, again, makes people think, well, what's he got to hide if you're coughing up that much money?
Is there a chance now, Rupert, that the King will tear up his agreement with Andrew to accommodate him on the Sandringham estate free of charge for the rest of his life?
I think maybe the King thinks he was hoping it was going to go away. I think he still will have a sort of filial association with him in a sense, well, he is my brother. But in a way, Andrew needs to, by the King, sort this mess out once and for all. I think that's the way it's got to be done.
Well, most definitely, but I wonder whether it's politically difficult for the King to accommodate Andrew on the Sandringham estate, on royal property, following these latest revelations, and particularly, Rupert, that damning photo, because the original photo with his sex accuser, Virginia Giuffre, the reason that was damning is because it linked him to that young woman who said she was trafficked for sex. The problem with this latest photo is it's just unedifying to watch, with him hovering on all fours over an unnamed woman.
Yes, it is absolutely horrendous, these pictures. You know, it sort of conjures up all horrible images and just looks seedy. So the King will be deeply embarrassed. But where does he turn? You know, he's at the moment, Andrew is still innocent, you know, because none of these allegations have been tested in a court of law. So it's very difficult because, you know, the British judgment, you're innocent until proved guilty. Now, these allegations are well and truly out there, and we perhaps, you know, may have made up our minds anyway. But until it goes to a court of law or some form of civil court or whatever it is, Andrew is still maybe, he says, well, he's innocent in his eyes. But we know that many of us think, well, he seems to have been embroiled in this into a very full extent. And that is the problem for Andrew. So the King is in a difficult position, I think, both emotionally, as it's his younger brother, and also how does he take it further? You know, if he says, right, I've got to send you further away, when you're not, nothing has been proven in a court of law. That is the difficulty for the King.
How do you solve a problem like Andrew? Rupert, thank you so much for your input on that story. I just wonder, clearly, Andrew's a man of poor judgment. He's denied the allegations. He's been found guilty of no crimes. Is he the fall guy? Is he the whipping boy? Is he the human shield protecting a lot of very powerful American politicians and entrepreneurs? Let me know your thoughts. Should he be in jail? 0344 499 1000. So much more to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, top of the morning, happy Monday, one and all. It is 8:03. This is Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you for one day only. Jeremy Kyle back tomorrow at 6. And breaking this morning, a fresh crisis for Sir Keir Starmer as the man that he appointed British ambassador to the United States. The architect of the new Labour project, Peter Mandelson, stands accused of receiving thousands of pounds from disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. He reportedly lobbied former Cabinet Minister colleagues to scrap a banker's tax to help his friend Jeffrey, and he's photographed half naked in his underpants alongside an unnamed woman in a shower robe. Deafening silence from Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, who was a stuck record about Tory sleaze. Can you imagine if the headlines surrounding Lord Mandelson this morning related to a Conservative government minister or, may God forbid, a Reform UK MP? We'd never hear the end of it. Meanwhile, the British countryside, we're told, will be made into a less white environment under nationwide diversity plans. So my question to you this morning, it's a simple one. Is the countryside racist? Are those sheep a bit far right? And what about the cows? Do you think they like Nigel Farage? Let's hope not. Utter madness. Meanwhile, as it's revealed that a quarter of Brits would be better off not working and going on benefits, and with the United Kingdom set to become the highest spender on benefits for sick people in the whole of the G7, should we call time on benefits Britain? 03444991000, my number. Book your place on the show. Samara is taking your calls right now. Sophia, I should say. Let me also tell you, folks, that you can text us. Text the word talk in your message to 87222, or leave us a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. And let's kick off the hour with another scandal, which is asylum seekers to be housed in brand new council houses. You heard me right, folks. You're not living in a parallel universe. Let's get reaction from Isabel Oakeshott, who is Talk's international editor. Good morning, Isabel.
Good morning. Well, another day, another act of complete political insanity. You can imagine how this is going down amongst Labour MPs in those so-called red wall seats. I mean, it is absolutely toxic in those areas. I mean, toxic everywhere because there's such a shortage of council houses for hard-pressed British working people. And the idea that they should just be dished out to new arrivals is going to be anathema to people. I genuinely don't understand which geniuses in Downing Street, in the Cabinet Office, in the local government departments thinks that this is a tenable policy.
Indeed. Well, I think they thought the silver bullet was to empty the migrant hotels, but this is deck chairs on the Titanic. As one of my callers said earlier, they shouldn't be here in the first place.
Well, this is exactly right. And I've heard many of your contributions on the show this morning, many callers just pointing out, it's the wrong answer to the fundamental problem. The answer to the problem is to stop so many people coming in who are completely dependent on the state for their new lives here. Having examined in depth the type of people who are coming over, in particular on small boats, but we shouldn't forget, by the way, that an awful lot of people are still coming over by other means. These people are not in any shape fit to contribute to our society. They don't have skills. They can hardly tell you which country they're from. They have no English. They are completely disempowered. They are pawns in a wider game. It's a criminal game. It's a geopolitical game. And they are going to be welfare dependent for quite likely, in some cases, their whole lives. And why would we do this? It's an act of massive self-harm.
But I'm so confused because my left-wing friends tell me they're all doctors, engineers and brain surgeons, Isabel.
Well, I would like to invite anyone who talks that complete nonsense to come with me and have a look and maybe introduce themselves, spend a little bit of time in the migrant camps of Calais and Dunkirk. And if they can find me a single doctor, then I will be very happy to eat a massive dose of humble pie and pay a large sum in a bet. It's not happening. Isn't going to happen.
We're also told, Isabel, by the left that these are relatively small numbers, that the number of illegal immigrants coming into the UK is a fraction of what's happening on the continent, and that it dwarfs the legal net figure of people that have come to the country through legal means. But that's not true, is it? Because I think based on our calculations, if the numbers continue at this pace, there will be upwards of 1/3 people entering the country illegally in the course of this parliament.
I mean, the numbers are absolutely insane. You know, I don't think most voters want to see a single boatload of undocumented males coming into our country per month. And yet we've got multiple boats per week when the weather is nice enough for that to happen. Now, this morning, I'm speaking to you from Vienna in Austria, where the numbers, to take an example, in October, they had around 1,000 asylum claims. Now, you know, in the average week...
Oh, we've just lost the line there to Isabel. Look, she's frozen in her prime. Don't worry, she's not been censored for truth bombs. I completely agree with what she said. The relationship now between citizen and state has been completely usurped. It has been destroyed because the idea of having a government, of having a state, is to police your external borders. Well, how's that working out for you? Is to keep law and order on the streets. How's that working out for you? And to take care of the nation's finances. How's that working out for you? We've had governments of all colours working against the British national interest, and more egregiously, working against the interests of the British people. And I think one of the big aspects of that is the benefits bill. Joanna in Salisbury says, good Mark, benefits are not too high. It is set at a minimum basic living without any frills. Cheap foreign labour that also claim benefits have kept wages down and companies make more profits. Working means that there is nothing left after basic bills of rent, mortgage, food and basic utilities at the end of the month. Well said, Joanna. Do we need to call time on Benefits Britain? Tristan is in Bolton. Good morning, Tristan.
Hiya, Mark. Yeah, it's about the benefits things. I'm on benefits. I claim PIP. I have arthritis in both knees. I have complex combat PTSD, anxiety, depression. So I get benefits. However, I can't claim universal.
Now, what a shame. We're having trouble with the line to Tristan. Tristan, let me call you back. We're going to just get a better line to you because it's very important what you have to say, because Tristan has a range of physical and mental issues which make it very difficult for him to work. He's a candidate for benefits and he's struggling to get some of them. And that's my problem, because I think there is an empathetic and moral argument for tackling the benefits bill so it can go to those who actually need it. Because what is stress? What is anxiety? Well, we've got inflation at the moment, so there is a lot of anxiety when you try to do your weekly supermarket shop and buy clothes for your kids. There is a lot of anxiety when you've lost your job, given the fact that unemployment has gone up under this government. Tristan, we've got you back on the line. I just wanted to get a clearer line to you because I need to hear every word you've got to say. What you're telling me is you're a candidate for benefits and you're not getting them.
No, I can't get benefits. I'd much rather work. I just want to say I'd much rather work than claim benefits. However, I can't. The universal credit, I can't claim universal credit because I own a property abroad. I can't afford to buy a property in England. I had some money. I invested it in a property abroad.
Yeah.
I don't get an income from that property. The reason I have that property is sometimes life gets too much for me here and I need to get away.
Yeah.
So I go away. But because I own this property, I can't claim universal credit. Now, my income is less than my outgoings. I'm lucky that I have a military pension, which I've just turned 60. I can claim my military pension. If I couldn't claim that military pension, I'd be 450 quid less coming in than what I had going out. I have about £100 a month more going out than I have coming in at the moment.
Tristan, it's a scandal, and you've served this country. First of all, can I salute you for your service to this country? You've placed yourself in harm's way. You've got mental and physical injuries from your time in the forces. Is that right?
Yeah. My injuries are all forces related. My arthritis is because I'm ex-infantry. We used to carry a house on our back, you know.
Yeah.
So that arthritis comes from that. My PTSD comes from time in Northern Ireland.
Of course.
My depression comes from that. My anxiety comes from that. So it all comes from that. Yeah, I have served this country. I don't think the country owes me anything. Don't get me wrong. I don't think well, I've done this for you, so I deserve that. No, that isn't the point. The point is, I can't claim universal credit because the government have said, well, you own a property here. Yet there's people that come from abroad that own properties abroad.
Yep.
Because that's where the family are. That's where the family are, and they can claim child benefit, send it to the family and wherever they are. They can claim universal credit because it's basically they don't own the house, the family's still living in it. It's a load of rubbish.
Well, the message clear, Tristan, whether it's the fact that people can come from overseas and claim benefits, or whether it's brand new social housing, which is going to asylum seekers, the message, Tristan, seems to be clear, which is that Brits are at the back of the queue.
Exactly, the back of the queue with everything.
What are your prospects, Tristan?
Not just housing.
What are your prospects?
My prospects, I don't think I have any. Like I say, I'm 60. The one thing that hit me the hardest it's not my knees. My knees, I'm in constant pain with them. The hardest thing to deal with is my mental health.
Yeah.
I thought that I'd be able to get cured of my PTSD, that I get cured of my depression, of my anxiety. I won't. It'll always be there. I've got this mental health issue now for the rest of my life.
Tristan, my heart goes out to you, Tristan, and I'm so glad you called. And will you keep this conversation going? Call me again, and I'll always put you on air, because your story is an important one, which is you served this country, you wrecked your body as a military veteran, right? Your knees are shot to pieces, as you say, carried a house every day as an infantry soldier, and the mental scars of war. You count your blessings, Tristan, that Keir Starmer's not going to get you sued by a human rights lawyer for your pleasure. Tristan, we thank you for your contribution to this country, and what a scandal that now the welfare state hasn't got your back when you're going through significant mental and physical issues. That's my point about the welfare state. I want to have it, but it's got to be for those who need it. Isabel Oakeshott is back. Isabel, I don't know how much you caught of that call, but a former military veteran whose knees are shot to pieces. His body's a mess, and he's got PTSD as well, and he can't get benefits because he has a tiny property overseas and no money here.
I mean, this is just absolutely appalling, and it sums up the distortion of our system. We've got this insanely bloated welfare state that appears to be benefiting far too many of the wrong people. You know, you said right there, none of us on this station are campaigning for no welfare state. None of us think that a civilized country should not be looking after people who truly need it. It's there for a good reason. The trouble is that it is so absolutely catastrophically and systematically abused by people who don't need it. And that takes away resources for the truly deserving cases like the caller just now. We've got this so wrong, haven't we? We've got it so wrong. We were talking earlier about the council house proposal. I mean, all of this is absolutely shaping our politics. You know, it's becoming the number one issue in our country, which is who deserves what and what kinds of people we're letting in. And when I got cut off there, I was just beginning to tell you about how different it feels. I'm in Austria at the moment, in Vienna. Their politics has been very, very heavily shaped by immigration in recent years. In fact, at the last election, it was a genuinely far-right party that won the most votes, but a coalition kind of worked together to keep them out. But what they have done here is really quite effectively cracked down on the scale of asylum applications. And I was giving an example about 1 month last year, only 1,000 claims. Now, compared to what we're getting in the UK, sometimes we get 1,000 or more coming over in a single day just on the small boats. And the whole feel of this city here in Vienna is so different from London. You know, you don't see huddles of young males who have clearly only arrived recently and have no jobs to do, nothing to do. They're loitering around in quite an intimidating fashion. You know, illegal immigration is totally changing the atmosphere, the environment, and the safety of our towns and cities in the UK. Other countries in the EU that are not islands, that are part of Schengen and therefore ought to find it more difficult to control their borders, are doing a better job of this than we are.
And briefly, Isabel, is there hope for my viewers and listeners? Or are the problems facing this country, whether it's energy supply, a broken economy, a legacy of debt, open borders, are these problems now too big to fix?
Well, I don't think we can sugarcoat this. The problems are absolutely gargantuan. And even if we get a very different type of government that comes in a few years' time with a mandate to turn all of this around, with a mandate for a truly radical reforming agenda, it's going to be such a challenge to actually implement that. Imagine the toughness of the approach that's going to be required. You know, what governments traditionally typically call difficult decisions are going to be almost impossible decisions for another government to make. You know, the scale of this is fantastic to imagine. And yet I think we're in last chance saloon. I really do. I think if we don't get a radically different government next time round, it's going to be too late. We will be past the point of no return.
Isabel, thank you so much for joining us. Isabel Oakeshott is Talk's international editor with a damning verdict on Broken Britain. She says there's hope, it can be fixed, but it will be the mother of all challenges. And she's right about change. I'm going to use the R word, which is revolution. That's what we need. We need to tear out the establishment. We need to unplug the whole country, plug it back in again. A full reboot, and then there might be hope. But change is coming, folks. Bring popcorn. So much more to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:22, you're listening to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you for one day only. The brilliant Jeremy Kyle back tomorrow at 6 a.m. Do we need to call time on the excesses of Benefits Britain? James in Telford says, good morning, Mark. In the last few weeks, 4 families, myself included, are being evicted from the same row of 6 houses in Telford. These are nice big 3-storey houses with plenty of room for multiple families. All of you are hard-working families who now face homelessness due to the spread of immigrants and Labour's ridiculous Renters' Rights Bill. Yeah, the Renters' Rights Bill will be subject to that golden rule of the law of diminishing returns and of unintended consequences. It's going to create more homelessness. You couldn't make it up. What about this regarding Benefits Britain? Nikki says, good morning, Mark. Nikki in Huntingdon. My 25-year-old daughter has crippling anxiety and poor mental health. Today she got her master's degree and her results, she passed with a 2-1. She works full-time in the physiology department of a prison, and she's raising my granddaughter too. She's just taken on a second seasonal job in retail. All my children have great work ethics. 1 veteran, now lorry driving, 1 prison officer, and my youngest is currently also working at Tesco. Children learn by example. Well, Nikki, can I salute you and your industrious family, and can I congratulate your daughter on her excellent 2-1? And she's doing that alongside a range of mental health issues, but she works and she powers through it, which I think is a lesson to all of us. Now, what about Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and Lord Peter Mandelson, both embroiled in scandal around their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Let's get a voice note from Tony.
Good morning, Mark. Tony from North Somerset. I regularly call into the show and leave voice notes. On the old Mandelson thing, which has been breaking since yesterday, and that's been a story for a fair few months because of his seedy dealings with Jeffrey Epstein. Isn't it funny you don't see a term of expression being used by the media so much, where you used to see it when the Tories were in charge, and I'm no fan of the Tories anymore, but all you ever seen or saw was headlines like Tory sleaze, Tory misdemeanors, Tories have done this, again, another Tory MP done that. It just makes me wonder why no one uses Labour sleaze. Can you enlighten me, please?
Because the majority of establishment media, the political establishment, they're all woke lefties, Tony. And that's why you need a channel like Talk that gets to the truth, that isn't partisan, but will call out any politician guilty of impropriety. Let me tell you, Tony, that I was Boris Johnson's biggest critic in this studio on the Drive Time show during the pandemic. With, in my view, the COVID overreaction, I'll be the first to criticise Boris for the Boris wave. So many of the problems are as a result of that Conservative government. I don't care what your rosette is. If you are a corrupt politician, I will call it out. And Tony, you're so right. Plenty of them are Labour MPs, including a housing secretary in Angela Rayner that didn't pay her stamp duty and had about 57 addresses in the 2010s. Still not quite clear what her home was. Council tax. Question to answer there. You've got a corruption minister being done for corruption in Pakistan. The list goes on. You couldn't make it up. A transport secretary that, what did she steal a mobile phone or something? The list is endless. So, Tony, thank you for setting the record straight on that one. Daily Telegraph. Sick Britain to hand out most benefits in the entire G7 in the years ahead. Meanwhile, the Express report that a quarter of Brits would be better off staying at home on benefits than going to work. Let's get reaction now from Ryan Saby, the deputy political editor of The Sun newspaper. And Ryan, the vast majority of your readers at The Sun get up in the morning, they put a shift in, same as my viewers and listeners here on Talk Breakfast. The message from the authorities is don't bother.
Oh, yeah, Mark. Good morning, Mark. This is a big problem that all politicians have had over the last few years, is trying to get that welfare bill down. And it doesn't really help Alarm Clock Britain. Nigel Farage was the one who coined that phrase not that long ago. And I think one of the issues is, particularly for Sir Keir Starmer, He just needs to be bold and brave and get these welfare reductions through. However, every time he tries to do something, every time the Chancellor tries to put pressure on him to do something, he looks around and he sees probably 100 Labour backbench MPs who are going to stand in the way. And the trouble is, if you can't reduce that welfare bill, you've got absolutely no chance of bringing taxes down. You've got no chance of maybe shifting some of that money onto defence spending. And life just becomes more and more difficult. Public services deteriorate. All these things happen because you're not trying to tackle one of the biggest problems. And there is an issue with people not going to work, but I think there's also an issue with some people who may be claiming benefits can do some work. How can you ease those people back into the workplace? And this is the issue that Pat McFadden, the welfare secretary, is looking at. And just one thing on this, Mark, Alan Milburn is looking at youth inactivity. We've got nearly a million young people who are not in education, employment, or training, and this is a big issue, not only for now, but in the years, generation to come.
Yes, this just doesn't end well, does it? We're on the road to bankruptcy, Ryan, and I know that you and myself and, our various audiences, your readers at The Sun, my viewers and listeners, no one's got a problem with paying taxes and to have a welfare state. It's the most miraculous invention. It's an example of a civilised society. No one's got a problem, Ryan, with a blind person, somebody with hearing issues, somebody in a wheelchair, someone that's having multiple epileptic fits every day, whatever their condition, MS, we pay our taxes to take care of those people. The issue you got now, Ryan, is the rather concerning exploitation of the mental health side of it. Now, I've got plenty of viewers and listeners who are struggling, including my last caller, with PTSD from having served in the military. That is serious, bipolar disorder. But what about this message, Ryan, from a listener to the show? Good morning, Mark. Adults are now getting themselves diagnosed with ADHD as they know what benefits they can get. They've done their research on the condition and know exactly what they need to say in front of the professionals. There should be data to show the increase of this diagnosis in adults, and this does need to be addressed, as there are many people who are disabled and they get failed by the system. That's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's very, very difficult. And again, something that the last Conservative government tried to do, I think this government are trying to look at, is trying to bring back those face-to-face interviews, in job centres or the like, so people can actually come to you and actually explain where their issues lie. Because at the moment, what you have, you do it on a screen. You can find scripts, on social media, on the internet, and you just talk through your conditions. You know exactly what to say to the assessor. It's a tick box exercise, and you end up getting signed up. And I think the other issue is fit notes, the sort of old style fit notes, and the pressure on GPs. They haven't got time to assess people. They're probably not qualified in some ways to sort of go through the whole assessment. They're medical people. I think that perhaps that kind of thing needs to be reassessed, and they need to go elsewhere so the doctors can concentrate on treating those people who need help. And so I think that the GPs need to work sort of hand in glove with people from outside to actually get a handle on things.
Most definitely. The Sun newspaper is #1 for political scoops, thanks in no small part to the Deputy Political Editor, Ryan Saby. Ryan, thank you so much for your input on that one. Jerry's in Yorkshire. Jerry, do we need to tackle Benefits Britain?
Yes. I've worked all my life since I was 16, and I was struck down with epilepsy back in April, passed out at work, and that's stopped me from working because I was in engineering. Passed out 3 times, once on my motorbike, had 17 seizures between April and October, and I cannot get universal credit. It was awarded to me and then taken away. They put me on low capacity to work system. It was awarded to me and taken away. And like your previous caller, I've got more outgoings than I've got coming in. So that's £90 a week on ESA and £300 on PIP. And it just gives more depression to the people that are desperate for money. And I've got no idea why people that have worked all their lives can't get any help. off this government.
Well, Jerry, you raise a really important point, because oddly enough, when I say that I want to tackle Benefits Britain, strangely, I would like to increase benefits for people like you that need it. I would like people who are blind and who are deaf, who are in a wheelchair, or having 17 epileptic fits in the course of a few months like you've been through, Jerry. I would like you to get a pay rise because you cannot work. Epilepsy, the most devastating condition, and my heart goes out to you for what you're going through. How does it make you feel, therefore, for others, quite often in the public sector, signed off work with stress for 6 months or a year?
It must be the system with the tick boxes, because if you're really desperate, you don't fit the tick boxes that they try and put you in. So they've made it easier for people that aren't really ill. But don't get me wrong, there are people that have depression. I mean, that's a side effect of the epilepsy. I've even got short-term memory loss.
Yeah.
The seizures emanate from the cortex. But there's no way on earth at the moment. I mean, I was expecting to work into my retirement in engineering, but I can't wait. I'll retire in about 18 months' time, and I'll be better off on a £1,100 pension.
And Jerry, what have you been through emotionally over all of these years trying to get the benefits that you desperately need? Can you just take me through how it's been for you personally?
Oh, the depression. You know, I cry every day. Can't say no more than that, really.
Jerry, this is so unfair. I think that's the word I'd use.
Yeah. But one of the things regarding your other caller is that it was on the internet. I saw a migrant hotel, and the people were filming an old soldier sleeping outside the migrant hotel, and that really hit home for me. That's so wrong.
The relationship between citizen and state has been perverted, hasn't it, Jerry?
It's like a cancer eating the country out from within, starting with the big cities, like you're saying, that the mosques are being built in the countryside. It's like a cancer, and it has to be cut out.
And Jerry, are you working then some hours at the moment in the absence of benefits?
I can't go out. I'm stuck at home for 10 hours a day.
So you're not able. You literally. So you've got no money coming in, courtesy of the state, and you're not able to work at all.
All I get is ESA, which is £90 a week, and
you're trying to survive on that, and you've worked in a great career as an engineer for your adult life.
Yeah, I've been out of work several times in my life, but I've got to work. I've got jobs next day. I've always been around people, and being at home for 10 hours a day is killing me mentally. I mean, today I've got an MRI on my spine. I've got an MRI on my prostate next Monday. I've got referrals to heart clinics. So,
I mean, Jerry, if epilepsy doesn't qualify for welfare benefits, the world's gone mad. I mean, this is a disease. Every time you have a seizure, it damages the brain, and your whole physiology is impacted, isn't it? And you don't know when it's coming. You don't know when a fit is coming. It's the worst condition, and yet you got other people working in a local authority in the accounts department off sick with stress for 6 months. It's so wrong. Jerry, before I go, and first of all, do stay in touch with us, okay? And Safira's always there to pick up the phone, and anyone at Talk, I'll make sure that on my watch we put you on air. Have you got family around you or anything like that?
Well, the irony is we moved up from Berkshire in 23 because I had an offer of a job in engineering, and we moved up, and it was going really well until Labour got in 24, and the company had £150 million worth of contracts, and they laid 25% of the workforce off because of the NIC employee tax. I got a job straight away afterwards, but it's all fallen apart since I went down with epilepsy.
And Jerry, you know, you're the reason why my viewers and listeners get up in the morning and they put a shift in, and why they pay their taxes, because I guarantee you, not 99%, 100% of them will say that they go out to work as a bricklayer. I had a bricklayer on yesterday, and his hands are actually ruined. He's in his 60s because of the bricklaying for all those years. And he, I guarantee you, is happy to pay his taxes to take care of you, and yet you're getting nothing. Yeah. 90 quid a week doesn't even touch the sides. Jerry, I want you to stay in touch with me. I would love, I'm 5 minutes over now, because I just had to get your story out there. And I will tell you that I will speak to our digital department if you can, Christian. Let's get this conversation viral. A, so that there's some support for you, Jerry, and B, to illustrate what is going so horribly wrong with our country. Jerry, we love you. You're a rock star. Keep the faith, big man, and let's speak again soon. We'll always pick up the phone to you, and my heart goes out to you, Jerry. I wish you all the best medical support, and at some point, maybe you could get some state financial support as well. Jerry's in Yorkshire there. What a painful call to take, but an important one, an example of what this place is all about. More to come. This is Talk Breakfast, 8:38.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You're listening to Talk Breakfast. So much support coming in for Jerry. A lot of people just pointing out how incredibly unfair the whole system is. And Jerry, everyone that's listening and watching the show has got your back, and we support you, and we really, really do wish you all of the best going forward. Stay in touch and keep us up to date with what's going on. The country is mad. You've now got woke lefties walking around the countryside counting people of colour. I think it's quite racist, isn't it, to go to the countryside and have a clipboard and go, oh, there's a black person. Is that not racist? Make it make sense. Anyhow, this is Gordon with a voice note.
Morning, Mark. What's all this about the countryside being racist? Whenever I've been out driving, I look in the fields and the cows all seem black and white. Thanks, great show. Cheers, Gordon in Slough.
Gordon, we needed that chuckle. Unfortunately, Gordon, a lot of the sheep are far right. I got to tell you that. And I was actually near a cow once that spoke quite positively about Nigel Farage. Utter madness. Gordon, you're a legend. We need to smile, don't we? Maybe Maxwell Marlowe can help us, because Maxwell Marlowe is the Director of Research at the Adam Smith Institute. And Maxwell, lovely to have you on the show. One of my headlines whenever I'm on air is to point out that the country lives...
Hi, Mark. Hello.
Good to see you. One of the points that I always raise when I am on this show, and I've been saying this, I'm afraid, for years, Maxwell, is that this is a country that lives beyond its means. And that doesn't end well, does it? And if we were to have a financial crash, it would be Greece times 100. And one of the big problems is the cult of welfarism. No one's got a problem paying their taxes, so that somebody like my lovely last caller who's got epilepsy is supported in his health journey. But the issue now is, what about that headline, Sick Britain to hand out the most benefits in the entire G7?
Well, yes, well, good morning. It's completely ludicrous when you think about it. We're supposed to be a productive, industrious, hard-working country, but, you know, our own research at the Adam Smith Institute shows that 52% of the British population rely on the state more for handouts and work contracts than they do paying in. So only 48% of households are actually paying into the system. And, to take from this brilliant report from Onward, which you've been talking about earlier in the show, about that kind of £10 billion of opaque benefits that are going out. So that's equivalent to about £300 per household. So if we actually look at how many households are paying in tax, that's just under half. That's £600 extra in tax per year going out in these opaque benefits, never mind the rest of it. So we've also got some pretty interesting research at the Adam Smith Institute. We've looked at the size of the state pension. When does the state pension become fiscally insolvent? That means when does it end up paying out more than it takes in through national insurance? We've worked out that's going to be in 2036. So things are starting to cave in pretty quickly, Mark. It's really quite concerning for our fiscal position, but also I think for the moral fabric of this nation. People, your listeners, my mates who are all quite young, we don't lie in bed in the morning in order to, sit there scrolling on TikTok or Instagram or whatever else. We go out and we work because we know that we've got to put food on the table, that we've got to keep a roof over our heads. And it turns out that, almost 40% of the tax, people in, my age bracket are paying is just to keep people in bed, scrolling TikTok, whatever else. It's insanity.
I don't think anybody that I know, and I doubt many people on this listening to the channel watching, want to get rid of the welfare state. I don't think we necessarily want to become Dubai, but there needs to be the mother of all recalibrations between citizen and state when it comes to that safety net, doesn't there?
There really does at the end of the day. It's really quite concerning when you look at, the size of the issue. And we're not seeing much, pull from the government on this. It was only last year, let's not forget that, Keir Starmer tried to impose only £10 billion worth of welfare cuts, the same that we're now seeing being put forward in shadow benefits. He saw a massive backbench rebellion. And he's now put off further reforms for another year. So that means he's only got really 2 years in his government left to really crack down on the fact that, we're going to see a ginormous amount of, welfare exploitation fundamentally across the British population. Let's not also forget that we've got half of the people claiming universal credit are not fit for work. That means they don't have a requirement fundamentally to go out and find what jobs are left in the productive economy that's already being overtaxed and overregulated. So it just means fundamentally that we're going to be paying even more money 5-10 years down the line, which, even if Labour win the next election, which at the moment, let's look at the polls, is looking unlikely, there's going to be an enormous amount of dross to fundamentally pick up and fix. And I don't think any of the parties at the moment have the answer to that because the welfare bill is getting way too large compared to our economic growth.
Indeed. And of course, Maxwell, you'll get dog's abuse in polite company for saying that the country lives beyond its means. But the cost of servicing our debt alone, the interest is $100 billion a year. And the truth is that we do live beyond our means. The country is not financially viable, is it? We are on the road to ruin. I sometimes feel like the British economy is a Ponzi scheme that at some point is going to get found out.
Do you know, Mark, I don't quite agree with that initial statement. I've got lots of friends from across the political spectrum. I've even started a business with people who have been in the Labour Party their whole life. And even they are saying to me, over a very expensive taxed pint in the pub, that they just see this thing going absolutely nowhere. Even my dear mother, who's never voted Conservative or Reform or even Liberal Democrat, even she is now admitting, whenever I go home for a Sunday lunch, that things are going really, really badly. And we can see from the Prime Minister's own approval ratings in his own party that even Labour Party members are getting really concerned about this.
Brilliant stuff. I wish we had longer. Maxwell, God bless your mother. She raised a good one. We'll speak very, very soon. Wish we had longer. Maxwell Marlowe is the Director of Research at the Adam Smith Institute, who says, no, people have woken up. The country is a little bit of a Ponzi scheme. We'll get to more of your calls shortly. Do we need to have a look at Benefits Britain? Do we need to claw it back and make it more affordable? Looking forward to that conversation. But coming up, last month, an illegal immigrant was sentenced to a minimum term of 29 years in prison for murdering migrant hotel worker Rhiannon White. Her killer, Deng Majek from Sudan, was refused asylum in Germany but ended up in Britain and housed at taxpayers' expense. She died on the 23rd of October 2024, 3 days after she was stabbed 23 times with a screwdriver. In a Talk Breakfast exclusive, our reporter Samara Gill has spoken to her mother. Take a listen.
how do we continue to navigate life without her? Her son, my grandchildren, my children, how do we navigate life without her? And he is taxpayers' money put into a prison.
It's going to cost around £1.8 million. Yeah.
It is extraordinary. So, the mother of a woman murdered by a screwdriver from somebody that was accommodated in the accommodation where she was working, she speaks out. The full interview is next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:50, it is Talk Breakfast. I'm going to pack the next hour with your calls because we've had so many moving accounts of people that deserve welfare payouts that aren't getting them. Meanwhile, a lot of people, public sector workers, right? Stephanie from accounts, off sick for 6 months with so-called stress, whilst others, for example, who have served in the military or suffering from epilepsy, get diddly squat. It is so wrong. The incentives are wrong. It's perverse. This from June, and it's brilliant. Good morning, June. How are you? June says, Mark, my two kids are on the Asperger's syndrome spectrum. They're in their 30s, they live at home, they've worked all the way through COVID and are still working now. Working is good for them, and that is 2 kids, right, with Asperger's, a serious condition, and they're working, and surely it's got to pay to work. Now, folks, quick little detail on Louise Haigh. She resigned as Transport Secretary after it emerged that she pleaded guilty to a fraud offence a decade ago. She admitted telling police in 2013 she'd lost her work mobile phone in a mugging, but later found it had not been taken. So I thought I'd give you the full details of that. Apparently it's only the Tories that do sleaze, but that story raises more questions than it answers. OK, folks, in a Talk exclusive, our brilliant reporter Samara Gill has spoken to the mother of Rhiannon White, murdered by a guy being accommodated in the migrant hotel where she was employed. She was followed home, stabbed 23 times with a screwdriver, leaving a child orphaned. Here is the interview.
How did you learn of what had happened to Rhiannon?
Rhiannon was on the phone to her friend Emma, and she heard screams. Obviously the phone cut out. We phoned the police, phoned the hotel, and then it was kind of backwards and forwards with the police. We just thought she'd just been attacked. We didn't know the severity of it. We spoke to the doctors, and they came in and told us that Rhiannon had 6 hours.
So she'd been cooking, cleaning, working at this illegal migrant hotel for 6 months. She'd been caring for they were mostly young men. Had she expressed any concerns for her safety before then?
Just once. Rhiannon was very soft. If you shouted boo, she ran the other way. The night before, one of the illegals was drunk. Shouted at Rhiannon over a biscuit.
Right.
Well, instead of shut up, go away, sober up, she got upset. Day after, the Sunday, I said, don't go to work. I was worried. She said, Mum, it was just biscuits. I'll be all right. I'm off for a week now anyway. Never saw her again.
The Labour government has said that they will stop the boats. They've allowed over 60,000 people in.
They're not stopping the boats, though, Samara. What they're doing is they're enticing them in. Free NHS, benefit money, free hotels. It's women and children. Where are the women and children?
Does Keir Starmer have blood on his hands?
Yes, he does. I hope he lives with that for the rest of his life. It's not just my child he's taken away. These poor innocent children that are getting raped daily, may I add. These poor women like Rhiannon that are getting murdered. He and all the other people that agree with this, they have those people's blood on their hands.
29 years, is that enough?
Nothing will ever be enough. Nothing. We have a life sentence ahead of us for the rest of our lives. How do we continue to navigate life without her? Her son, my grandchildren, my children. How do we navigate life without her? And he is taxpayers' money put into a prison.
It's going to cost around £1.8 million.
Yeah. The judge, obviously it'll be 27 years with his 2 years or whatever he's done so far. The judge really thinks he probably won't even get parole.
Would you call for the death penalty for him if we did have something like that?
Yes, I would. It's not something that I ever believed in, but I know it's evident. It's evident what he done.
The ripple effect is obviously left behind a 5-year-old without a mother.
He sleeps with a teddy bear with Rhiannon's picture on. He talks about her often. We shouldn't be telling a child of any age that their mother was murdered. Do you know what the sad part about this is? If Starmer and his so-called government don't do something, we're not going to have a Britain. Changing Rhiannon's name for all the other women and children that are going through this, and the men too, because there is men being abused, attacked by these illegals. We get this changed in Rhiannon's name, and that's all we can ask for.
Now, Siobhan is the mother of Rhiannon White. May God bless the memory of Rhiannon White. Siobhan is a brave and articulate woman, and my thoughts and prayers go with her and the family. And it was well reported that the auntie had to tell the little boy that's been orphaned what happened to his mother, and the auntie said that the scream, the howl of pain from the child, is a sound that she will take to her grave. You heard me right. God bless Siobhan, God bless the family, God bless the memory of Rhiannon White, and let her passing not go in vain, and let it illustrate the very broken nature of this country. OK, folks, well done to Samara for that brilliant reporting. Samara Gill, who'll be back soon. We need a bit of cheering up now. Can we have a bit of football?
90 minutes in 90 seconds from The Sun.
It's the beautiful game and the beautiful Charlie Wyatt, the football editor at The Sun. Morning, Charlie.
All right, how are you?
Listen, really well. Thanks for making the time to talk to us last night. Oh, my goodness. Man City giving away a handsome lead against bad form Tottenham. Is it Arsenal's to lose now?
It's Arsenal's title.
Wow.
I think now. I
thought you were going to give me good news this morning. No. I'm in a really bad mood. I'm a Spurs fan.
Oh, that's all right. Okay, I gathered that. Look, I went to Leeds on Saturday. I thought if they cocked that up Saturday, they would have had a proper title challenge, and Arsenal would have been on the verge of bottling it. I think now they're absolutely fine. They're going to win the title. Man City are absolutely just falling to pieces.
Yeah, what's happened to Pep's football armada?
Yeah, they've just
sunk.
Had a lot of injuries. They're not quite there. They're a pale shadow of what they've been before. Arsenal, they're not the most exciting team, are they, in the world?
No.
I'm sure you'll agree with me there.
It's like George Graham.
They're going to, yeah, absolutely. But they're going to win the title.
Okay, and Pep, has he lost his touch, do you think? I mean,
No,
the idea that Pep Guardiola, the most decorated manager in European football, is blaming injuries. I mean, how the mighty have fallen, Charlie.
Yeah, things go in cycles. They really do.
He's turned into Harry Redknapp. I'm down to the bare bones.
Yeah, look, things go in cycles, and he's spent a lot of money, Pep, on a lot of players that have not quite worked out, despite all his moaning and his Harry Redknapp style whinging. And yeah, Arsenal, as I said, they're not an incredible team, but they're currently the best team. And I'm absolutely certain, I'm sorry, they're going to win the title, finally. And yes, so Arsenal fans can have something to smile about rather than moan.
Well, it will be well deserved. They've been consistent over several years, and now it looks like they'll take the trophy. By the way, a sleeping giant appears to have woken up. Man United, another win.
Yeah, it's a good story. I'll tell you what, right? You know, it is pleasing purely because it's nice to see an English coach. I know lots of people said why Michael Carrick got that job, but we've now got 6 English coaches in the Premier League, which makes a refreshing change. So, regardless of the fact that he's fortunate to get the job, him with Steve Holland, that was Gareth Southgate's number 2 for 8 years with England, I actually hope they do all right. And them doing well is bad news for Liverpool, because looking at the league table at the moment, with Chelsea as well, Liverpool might not even be getting in the Champions League.
Couple of seconds. Could Carrick keep the job?
Yes.
Wow, brilliant stuff. Charlie, thank you so much for joining us. It's a privilege to have you on the show. Charlie Wyatt is the football editor of The Sun, which of course is number 1 for sport, as well as politics and much besides. And what are we number 1 for? Talk. Common sense. The truth. More of that to come. This is Talk Breakfast, my last hour till Saturday. Let's make it worth it.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Coming up to 3 minutes past 9, you're listening to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle, who's back tomorrow. And breaking this morning, a fresh crisis for Sir Keir Starmer as the man that he appointed British ambassador to the US. The architect of New Labour, Peter Mandelson, stands accused of receiving thousands of pounds from disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. And the scandal isn't just about money, with a photograph emerging of the former business secretary under Gordon Brown standing half naked in his underpants alongside a woman in her shower robe. I thought it was only the Tories that did sleaze. Meanwhile, the Epstein files reveal that Mandelson, this absolute icon of the Labour movement, lobbied his own government colleagues in cabinet to scrap a planned tax on bankers' bonuses to help his friend Jeffrey. Can you imagine if this was a former Conservative politician or a sitting Reform MP? You'd never hear the end of it. So why the wall of silence, particularly from Number 10? Welcome to Bonkers Britain, where apparently the UK countryside is too white. It's going to be made less racist. Well, I'm very sympathetic to that, because I was in the countryside the other day on a bit of a walk in my Barber jacket, and I saw some sheep that I will say were very far right. And there was a cow that spoke fondly of Nigel Farage. I mean, I ain't going back. Utter madness. And what about this? Welcome to Broken Britain. A quarter of the population will be better off not working and going on benefits. Britain is set to become the biggest spender on benefits in the G7 within the next 5 years. So is it time to tackle the cult of welfarism in this country? So much to go at. It's a very busy hour. I'm going to prioritise your calls and texts. Nadia says, good morning, Mark. Is the countryside racist? Well, are the ethnic majority regions in the country racist when I don't see many white people like me? That's a very fair point, isn't it? Thank you for pointing out that wild hypocrisy. The world has definitely gone mad. Linda in Worcester, regarding the racist countryside, how come Jenrick was called a racist for criticising failed integration by saying he didn't see a white face when he visited Handsworth, but the lefties are apparently not racist for their comments about rural areas being too white? Well, Linda, you've raised a brilliant double standard. Welcome to the left. We've got a fresh scandal, by the way. Every day there's another one. And this is brand new social housing, which is going to go to asylum seekers, not British people who are waiting for accommodation. Here's a voice note from Pete.
Hi, Mark. It's Pete from Lancashire. Listen, mate, it absolutely boils me blood, all this, you know. There's a site where I live in Skelmersdale, mate. There's a site being built on, and there's a very strong rumour that it's HMO for HMO. Well, I can tell you 100%, mate, the residents of Skem won't put up with that, mate.
Pete, you're so right. The public anger is growing. Well, let's talk now about Lord Mandelson, who, of course, is the architect of the New Labour project, and a man that our Prime Minister Keir Starmer gave one of the biggest jobs in diplomacy as UK ambassador to Washington. Well, this is the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, announcing with great pride and excitement this appointment, which obviously has backfired. Take a listen.
Already I can feel there's a real buzz around Washington right now. You can sense that there's a new leader in town, that is a true one-off, a pioneer in business and in politics. Many people love him. Others love to hate him. But to us, he's just Peter.
Once again, I'm afraid there is the misjudgment of the Prime Minister writ large. This is a broken clock of a man that isn't even right twice a day. Let's get reaction from one of the most respected political journalists in the country, the former political editor of the Sun newspaper, Trevor Kavanagh. Good morning, Trevor.
Good morning, Mark.
The Prime Minister reliably makes the wrong call, doesn't he? The opposite of the Midas touch.
Yes, it's quite amazing. I mean, I'm not quite sure if that was egg on his face, but there was something all over it. And I think that, this is a reflection on his judgment as Prime Minister. Not for the first time, as you will know. In fact, you can probably list them. But he knew perfectly well when he was making that statement in support, those warm words about Peter Mandelson, that Mandelson had stayed at Epstein's New York mansion while Epstein was actually in prison for those paedophile offences, those crimes. And that was well known. In fact, I wrote it, and many others did too, at the time of Mandelson's appointment as ambassador. So there's no way that the government didn't know, no way that the security services didn't know that, and much more. And I think the ramifications of what's now being disclosed by this barrage of new emails goes much wider than just Peter Mandelson parading around in his underpants. I think that under close scrutiny, this might lead much further. For instance, we now know that Epstein was in close contact with Russia. He was on personal meeting terms with Putin. There are suggestions that the Russian government was actually funding him in his mysterious finances. And Peter Mandelson himself has very strange, mysterious links with Russia, not least through the aluminium oligarch Oleg Deripaska, with whom he is close friends and for whom, as Trade Secretary, Trade Commissioner with the European Union, he amended the laws about aluminium dumping so that Deripaska's monopoly of aluminium could be sent and sold in Europe. These are very murky waters indeed. Wherever there's anyone with a lot of money about, certain people, not least Peter Mandelson, but also the royal family in the sense of Prince Andrew and his ex-wife Fergie, they can be found very close by.
Trevor, a quick word on the US president. Do you think Donald Trump has dodged the Epstein bullet?
So far, so good, you might say. I think that there are a lot of questions, and there must be, because he had very close ties with Epstein up until a few years before he ran for the presidency. He was in and out of Epstein's company throughout a long period, and his interest in young women is well known, well documented, and in fact comes from his own lips. So I think there's more to come on Trump.
Interesting. We'll watch this space. Trevor, two shocking statistics over the last 24 hours. As reported by the Express yesterday, the Sunday Express, it would be better for a quarter of Brits to stay at home and not work. They'd be better off on benefits. Meanwhile, the Telegraph report today, sick Britain to hand out the most benefits in the entire G7. The political establishment and this Labour government didn't get the memo that we're broke.
No, we are broke, and we are not just broke, but getting deeper into debt. National debt is spiralling, and it will be a huge burden on future generations. I mean, not just future generations in the sense that we're talking about 20 or 30 years ago. I think probably the young people of today. And this government is spending money like water on welfare, on benefits, and not considering a single step to claw back that spending or to make sure that those who are drawing that money are entitled to it and deserve it. I mean, we've got so many people, 9 million people of working age who are not in employment. That's huge, and it's a huge burden on all the people who are actually working, who must pay for that money out of their taxes.
Most definitely, and some of those people will be in low-paid jobs, and they'll be wondering, why do I bother? I took a call yesterday from an excellent gentleman, Trevor, who is a bricklayer, and he's in his mid-60s. He'd love to retire. He's actually got severe arthritis in his hands from years of bricklaying in all weathers and multiple other injuries, but he has to work because he can't afford not to. People like him will think twice about paying their taxes if it's going to the wrong place.
Well, I think that will occur to a lot of people. We still have in this country, I'm delighted to say, a majority who are who have scruples about working, about getting up in the morning and doing a job and actually benefiting from it psychologically and domestically, socially, and in every other way. Goodness knows what would happen were more people tempted to go to the benefit offices and say, look, I can't earn as much as you're paying in dole money. I'm giving up my job. Please give me 15,000 a year.
Trevor, it won't have escaped your attention that the press reported yesterday that Angela Rayner, the former Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary, has amassed a £1 million war chest with which she hopes to unseat the Prime Minister. Is it conceivable that Angela Rayner could be in number 10 before the year is out?
Absolutely. And in fact, it has been conceivable from the moment that Keir Starmer began floundering a few days after becoming Prime Minister. Angela Rayner and Keir Starmer, for all their smiles and hugs, have no time for each other at all. They are at each other's throats, at least behind the scenes. And Angela Rayner, I understand, is very angry that other people are being mooted as the next Prime Minister, with her as the number 2. She doesn't want to be number 2, she wants to be number 1, and has done for a very long time, and actually is doing a very good job about preparing herself to take over. She has enormous support in the trade union movement, wide-ranging support within the party in Westminster. And I think if Keir Starmer falls under a bus or is pushed, which is probably more likely over the coming weeks, I think that she has the first chance and the best chance of succeeding him.
Trevor, do Labour MPs move before or after May, do you think?
I think probably after May, when there is absolutely no alternative. It could, of course, happen after the by-election on the 26th of this month in Manchester, but I think that they will now wait for the final verdict of the voters in the local elections, and that is going to be disastrous for them.
And if Angela Rayner were to replace Sir Keir Starmer, would you share my view, Trevor, that she's better at politics, but the policies would be worse because those union backers will want their pound of flesh if she enters number 10?
Yes, and I think that, you know, she has, or would have, if she became Prime Minister, 2.5 more years to ruin the remains of this country that are still intact. And I think the socialist policies that she would espouse would be literally catastrophic. I think that the worst thing that she would do, and almost certainly will do, is to appoint Ed Miliband as her Chancellor. What a combination. I mean, there's, as I say, a lot of ruin left in this country, and I think between the two of them, they could accomplish it.
Trevor, brilliant to see you again. We'll catch up soon. Trevor Kavanagh is the former political editor of the Sun newspaper who says, be afraid, be very afraid. Not quite a dream team, more like a nightmare pairing of Prime Minister Angela Rayner and Chancellor Ed Miliband. Be careful what you wish for. Keir Starmer, all is forgiven. Sean's in the Isle of Wight. Sean, do we need to call time on Benefits Britain?
Well, I'm actually on PIP and Universal Credit with the limited capability to work because I had a stroke in 2016. And I went on to benefits in just into 2017 under the Conservatives, and this was what I was trained up about. When I went to my PIP interview, it was done by a private firm. It wasn't anything to do with the benefits. They were private nurses, private doctors. And then when I went to my limited capability to work for the Universal Credit, I went in, I was talking to her about my physical disabilities and that, and she said, oh, and you got depression and anxiety? I said, no, I haven't. And she said, you have if you want to get this money, because it's the only way you get it. You've got to put down them two things. And again, I asked afterwards, I said, do you work for the benefits? She said, no, I'm a private contractor.
And they basically told you how to game the system, Sean?
Yeah, she told me if I didn't put down the depression and anxiety, I wouldn't get the payment. I wouldn't be able to go back and get it later. But now I'm glad that she did now because I'm housebound now, so I am stuck in a state of depression. But at the time I wasn't. I was still getting out and about. I had friends helping me. I was in a wheelchair most of the time. But I was just getting back to trying to walk a bit more and that. And she basically said, that's the only way you do it. And then when I went for an interview at the job centre, he said, right, we've written you off now. That's it, you're on the shelf.
What an absolute scam. Sean, I'm so glad you called this out. Briefly, if you can, well, how's your situation now? How are you doing, Sean?
I can walk 10, maybe 12 foot before I need a break with a crutch. I can't walk without a crutch.
Yeah.
I can drive now, but I have to drive in automatic because the blood clots that were in my head after my stroke are all down my left leg. I can't use my left leg. I can't do clutch control or any of that. So I can drive an automatic, but I'm also on 12, 13 different tablets a day just to keep me going.
Okay. Sean, listen, we send you our best. You know, you had a stroke. You're a candidate for benefits. It's very interesting when you went to a private contractor and they told you how to gain the system and what to put on the form. And I think that's happening across the piece. Sean, stay in touch with us. Wish you well, and do take care of yourself. If you've got a guy that can't walk for more than 10 feet before needing a break, I think you'll find he's a candidate for benefits. And that's my point. I actually want to give a pay rise to some people who deserve welfare, and I'd like to take it away from others. I'm so sorry, but the facts don't care about your feelings. Derek's in Manchester. Good morning, Derek.
Morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Why is our benefit system such a mess, do you think?
Well, if you look at it realistically, we're importing thousands of people per week, and the majority of them, I'm afraid to say, are on benefits. They're also, you know, you might get the odd one having a very low-paid job working for one of his mates from his home country and all the rest of it, but they're still topping up their incomes with benefits. They're having, you know, 7 or 8 kids to our one. Yeah, it's pretty obvious.
And it's been pointed out by Derek. It's been pointed out by someone texting the show that people coming from overseas, we don't always know. The authorities don't know what assets they may have abroad.
Well, yeah, I mean, regardless of that, though, the fact is they're coming to this country and they're still topping up the very low incomes that they're coming and doing jobs that are taking jobs off British people. Yeah. So you then say, well, look at our lazy kids. Our lazy kids don't want to get up and go to work for a slave wage. I mean, no wonder Keir Starmer's just been in China. I think he's been getting advice on how to get us all back into slavery.
You're right about that. It's got to pay to work, and that means well-paid jobs, and it means low inflation so that your wages aren't destroyed by rising prices, Derek. The whole system is perverse, isn't it? And a quarter of people are better off not working at all. Derek, call me again soon. Always love having you on the show. You talk a lot of sense, and the elephant in the room is immigration, and I'm afraid to say we've always had immigration. I'm an immigrant myself. My parents were Irish, but they came here to become British, to work. They never took a benefit their whole lives, but the majority of immigrants do actually become a net dependent on the welfare state. Again, I'm afraid it's true. The facts don't care about your feelings. What do you fancy? A bit of a voice note? I'm loving this story. You couldn't make it up, the Daily Telegraph. Countryside to become less white in rural diversity drive. This is woke middle-class people, right, with a clipboard going to the countryside and counting the black faces, which last time I checked is rather racist. But then the woke stuff, it doesn't make sense, does it? This is a voice note from Tony on that subject.
Good morning, Mark. It's Tony from Worcester. Just regarding that the countryside's racist. Clearly the BBC and the rest of the left-wing media, they're just going to promote this nonsense for the next, 4 to 5 months, and then the government will happily disperse lots of migrants throughout the countryside because it's sorely needed, isn't it? With the countryside being so racist, I give up with this country. I really do.
Tony, you speak for millions. Jill, people from abroad who are claiming benefits, how can we ever find out what pensions, income and property they have in their own country? Ian, do we live beyond our means? Well, yes, we do. We are in debt. But why don't you ask to whom we owe the money? The millionaires, the billionaires, they own Britain and they don't give a damn about its debt. Ian, you're so right about that. There are people that make money from our debt. They are international financiers and they are laughing all the way to the bank. We wouldn't have that problem, Ian, if we had national income. Because if we had national income, that's what economic growth is, then there would be cash coming in. We could then afford to pay for police officers and for schools and for hospitals without needing to borrow money. But our business model as a country is so topsy-turvy now, it's so perverse, that we have to borrow money just to keep the lights on. It's the equivalent of paying for milk, butter and eggs with your credit card. That is what the nation is doing. I'm not exaggerating. We've got a deficit. So day-to-day spending is currently as a result of borrowing. It's so dangerous. And can you imagine if we had another pandemic or a war, we would be so unprepared. That's why I think the policies of this government are actually dangerous. We'll keep this conversation going. Do we need to Get on top of benefits, Britain. And is the countryside racist? So much to get through. It is 9:22. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 9:24. You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. The brilliant, the supreme Julia Hartley-Brewer live at 10. And Jeremy Kyle back at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I return on Saturday of this week. Looking forward to that. This from Mark in London. Good morning, Mark. When you played the clip of the auntie who had to tell her 5-year-old nephew that his mother had died and he wailed, it made me cry. I'm 67 years of age. How does Starmer and his ilk sleep at night? Rob says, regarding rural diversity, it just means less white people, and that is racist. And Pauline, Mark, why are you so obsessed with Andrew's future living arrangements, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor? Do you want him living in a tent under London Bridge? What will be enough of a punishment for you? Pauline, thank you for that. Many people do think that Andrew is being unnecessarily vilified, and thank you for balancing out that debate. Billy's in Ayrshire. Good morning, Billy.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Good. How are conditions in Ayrshire? Because at the moment, London is enjoying a pea soup of fog. What are the conditions like there?
Well, it's not raining. That's all I can say.
I'll tell you that. Well, that's like tropical for Ayrshire. Billy, what's on your mind?
Well, regarding benefits, regarding my own personal circumstances, I'm okay. But I am aware that there are some people that play the system, which means that people like yours truly need to do everything possible in order to get everything we deserve. I remember hearing, pardon me, something about a woman, she was talking about her son, but there's one thing that I just don't get. When I was younger, I was obviously getting everything I was getting, but when I was diagnosed with tonic-clonic epilepsy, I climbed the ladder, if you know what I mean. I don't want to get into details, but why?
That's interesting. Yeah, and you know, where you are in Scotland, it was reported just over the weekend that under the SNP, you'd need to be making more than £51,000 a year to do better than some people on benefits. So things are even worse up in Scotland, aren't they?
Well, I'd say so, yeah. I don't obviously know the ins and outs, but they are a wee bit worse than down south.
Yeah, it's more of even more of a socialist state, isn't it?
Yeah, but what a lot of folk don't know about the system up here is benefits are no longer controlled by the DWP. They're now controlled by a Scottish agency known as SSS, which stands for Social Security Scotland.
Yeah.
So since SSS has come into play, things have been a lot better.
Well, let me give you
like myself.
Billy, let me give you the headline, right? This was in the Telegraph a couple of days ago. Benefits claimants handed a £56,000 salary under the SNP. So benefit claimants in Scotland received the same amount of money as a person earning 56k. A parent with 3 children could take home nearly 42 grand a year through a combination of UK-wide and devolved welfare payments. But on top of that, you've got other benefits. I mean, this is like winning the lottery, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't want to discuss my personal circumstances on national telly, but you know that circumstances are different for everybody, and it's good that the Scottish Government are doing what they're doing, but what's no helpful is the folk that play the system, as I've already said.
Billy, you're a wise man. I wish you well. Thank you for calling us from beautiful Scotland, where I lived for 4 years at the University of Edinburgh. What a lovely place, what a lovely city, what a lovely country. Horribly run by the SNP, in my humble opinion. But they are dominant electorally in Scotland. What's going to happen electorally in Greater Manchester and the forthcoming by-election at Gorton and Denton, which is happening on Thursday, the 26th of February. You'll get round-the-clock coverage here on Talk. And let's see how the polls are doing. Joe Twyman is the founder of Delta Poll. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Mark.
Who are the key runners and riders in this contest, would you say?
Well, what makes it interesting is that we don't actually have good data on this, because by-elections are unusual and weird in so many ways and have to be judged on their own merits. And this constituency is very new. And so whereas you would usually go for historical trends, on this occasion we only have one of those. We know that Labour did extremely well at the last election, winning more than 50% of the vote in this constituency, and then Reform and Green were essentially joint second place, some distance behind. And so one would assume that it's going to be very close between those three. But as I say, we really don't know. Gorton and Denton is an unusual constituency. It is made up of 2 very different demographic groups. And it could be that Labour's vote reduces significantly. It is, of course, very unusual for any government to hold on to seats at by-elections while they're in office. But whether that vote goes to Reform or goes to Green or goes to one of the other candidates remains to be seen.
Well, of course, and it's such an important contest, isn't it? The Tories have announced their candidate, Charlotte Cadden. Well, her votes aren't even going to touch the sides, are they? Jackie Pearcey at the Lib Dems, Hannah Spencer, the Green Party, SDP Sebastian Moore, Rejoin EU, Joseph O'Meara, Matt Goodwin for Reform UK and Angeliki Stoja for Labour. Reform UK, what do they need to do to move the dial in that constituency, would you say, Joe?
Well, they need to win over a large proportion of the demographic, of the white demographic voters. That's definitely clear, and so that means they need to win over former Labour voters. Simply relying on the voters they got last time around probably isn't going to be enough. But I say probably because we can speculate on what might happen, but it is just that, speculation. It could be the case that the for want of a better expression, left vote, so Labour, Lib Dem and Greens, essentially splits 3 ways, 3 equal portions, none of which are large enough to beat Reform, who may not need a significant increase on what they got last time, if that is what happens. At the same time, the anti-reform vote, as we've seen in some by-elections previously, may coalesce around one particular party if that can be organised. But I think what Reform have benefited from is essentially a week of publicity. They were out of the blocks extremely quickly. As you say, the Conservatives have only just announced their candidate. Labour announced their candidate late last week. I'm not sure the Greens have even announced yet. And so there's a momentum behind reform so far. But of course, a week is a long time in politics. There are a few long times remaining.
Well, indeed. We're in a world of known unknowns, aren't we, Joe? Thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Joe Twyman is the founder of Delta Poll. Well, actually, the Greens have come up with a candidate, a very, very politically correct young woman called Hannah Spencer, who we're told is a plumber. So there you go. Can she fix it? They hope she can. Too close to call, but politically very significant, that constituency. So much more to come. Do we need to call time on Benefits Britain? But next up, as this shocking photograph of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor does the rounds, with him squatting on all fours over an unnamed female, what's the King going through emotionally? And should he tear up that deal to accommodate Andrew free of charge at Sandringham for the rest of his life? I'll be asking the King's former butler next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk Breakfast, thank you so much for your company over the last 5 days. Thoroughly enjoyed every minute of it. I'm back on Saturday, so my regular slot, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 6 till 10. But Jezza and I did all switcheroo, and Jeremy will be looking after Friday as well this week. So he's back tomorrow. And yeah, it's been a great conversation. We've had so much to get through. Stories, international, local stuff. We will always prioritise what matters to you, and I think the broken benefit system has got to be the best example of that. At 9:34, let's take a voice note on that subject from Kelly.
Morning, Mark. It's Kelly from Kent here. Would someone please tell me what on earth they need PIP for if they've got ADHD and even autism? What does the extra money go? Where does the extra money go? It doesn't make sense to me. What do people need money for having ADHD? What exactly is it costing for them to have ADHD? I really, really would like someone to call in and enlighten me. Great show as always. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. I totally agree. The whole thing is murky. We need answers. There is real mental health. There are illnesses. There are kids who, without their ADHD medication, you would have to peel off the ceiling. But at the same time, I think that a lot of the mental health stuff is a complete scam because you can't prove it. And we've got evidence there that some people are being told what to put in the form in order to get their payout. And the reason why it's so unfair is because it's taking money away from blind people, from people who have hearing loss, people that are suffering from epilepsy, like my caller earlier. It's a scam. It makes no sense. It needs to be fixed, and fixed fast. Because why? We're on the road to ruin. Is our lovely guest ready? Let's tack into this, because I'm delighted to say we're joined by a very important man. Now, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor stands accused of impropriety in relation to his friendship with the disgraced paedophile Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein. There's a lot of stuff. The suggestion that there was financial impropriety, and this brand new photo of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor on all fours over an unnamed female. A shocking look for the brother of the King of the United Kingdom. So what is Charles going through right now emotionally? The anguish must be extraordinary. Let's get the views of a man that knows the King well, his former butler, Grant Harold. Grant, lovely to have you on the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
Now, Grant, you've always been very clear that the King is a very decent and honourable man. He cares a lot about his family, cares about the country, cares about the institution of the monarchy. And based upon his priorities, these headlines and that latest photo couldn't be worse news.
No, absolutely, Matt. I mean, we've spoken about this over many occasions. And as I've said, the King, you know, he's a family man. He adores his family. But of course, he's had to take these unprecedented steps in order to protect, if you like, the brand. And I think the last time we spoke, we said that it was possible that the situation could decline. There could be more that comes out, and more is coming out. And even though a photo can say 1,000 words, you know, you could take it either way. There's nothing incriminating about the photo.
Yeah.
But of course, it's probably causing more questions than answers, if I'm honest.
And the truth is that we don't know whether a crime has or has been not committed, of course. There's no evidence that it has, Grant. But do you not even think that those photos are unedifying for a member of the royal family? Or is that a harsh judgment?
Oh, yeah. I mean, of course. I mean, No. I mean, the thing is, because of what we know, what we're aware of course, we're looking at it through, you know, we're looking at it from that objective. We are seeing it from a negative, where maybe if, you know, it was any other pictures of members of the royal family, I mean, we wouldn't really see pictures of members of the royal family, can I say, with the greatest respect, on the floor with somebody. And even if there was photos, they'd be private. It'd be party games or something, nothing sinister, which is obviously with what's going on, and as you said, he's not been found guilty, but because of what's been said and what's been discussed, we do look at those images and we do wonder what's going on, and that's with good reason, because of what's happened in the past.
Most definitely. And just can I ask you, aside from the logistics of this and the legal accusations and claims of financial impropriety, salacious behaviour, if we set all of that aside, Grant, just emotionally, what do you think the King is going through at the moment when he reads these headlines?
I mean, I can't even imagine, Mark. I mean, I was saying to somebody, I'm once again on a cruise ship, and I was speaking to somebody last night, a couple of guests were talking to me about it, and they said how desperately sorry they feel, because ever since he's come to the throne, obviously through health, through family matters, through obviously what's happened with his son, now his brother.
Yeah.
I mean, the what's going on in the monarchy is we've never had this before. We never had this, really, not to this extent.
You're right.
In the Queen's lifetime. And of course, I don't think there's anyone that can't feel sorry for the King, because, you know, he's having to juggle and balance so many hats at the moment. You know, it must be really difficult for him. So I can't even imagine. You know, I imagine every day he wakes up thinking, what else is going to be thrown at me, possibly?
Well, that's right, because, Grant, you're not just a former royal butler, you're a royal expert and a keen royal historian, and it's abundantly clear that this is the single biggest crisis that's ever faced the monarchy. We had the abdication of Edward back in the day, but that wasn't mired in any sort of financial or salacious impropriety. This is the biggest scandal in a century.
No, you're right. And the abdication of, you know, back in 1987, it was described as a constitutional crisis, and it was, because we hadn't had an abdication. That was one with the greatest respect, and it was awful for the late George VI and the Queen Mother. But it was one thing, you know, one massive, but one thing. We've had so many, you know, we've had the death of Queen Elizabeth II. We've had a fallout with a father and son, a brother and son. There's been the scandal of a brother. There's unfortunately been, you know, health issues for, obviously, Princess Wales and the King. I mean, so many things all in such a short space of time, which is, talk about bad luck. I mean, it's like they've really been dealt a terrible hand, you know, if you like.
Now, you'll be aware of Andrew Lowney, who is, of course, the author of Entitled, The Fall of the House of York, which was perhaps the beginning.
Yes, I know Andrew.
And you know Andrew. Well, your fellow successful authors. I'm going to give the details of your brilliant book, which, by the way, did fantastically well in the charts. The Royal Butler, My Remarkable Life of Royal Service. We'll get to a plug for that at the end, because it's a great read. But Andrew Lowney told me on this show yesterday morning, Grant, that the King may now tear up that agreement to accommodate his brother Andrew free of charge on the Sandringham estate for the rest of his life. Now, do you think that is possible, that Charles could tear up that deal?
Completely possible. He's done as much as he can, if you like, in terms of distance and Andrew from the royal family with titles and role and military honours. All that's left kind of standing is time that he spent with his brother as a family member and assisting him, which is probably, I imagine, to do with his late mother, maybe asking him to assist his brother financially, possibly. But of course, if this continues to de-escalate, Andrew's absolutely right. I think Andrew Lowry is right. I think the reality is the King will be left with no other. I mean, the King will not want to be seen to be financing or funding him if things do continue to de-escalate as they seem to be doing. So I think he's right. I think he will. That will be the kind of final, if you like, the final parts of the distancing between the two brothers.
Wow, the beginning of the end for their relationship in its entirety. Well, Grant, lovely to see you again. Grant Harold is the author of The Royal Butler, My Remarkable Life of Royal Service, with Queen Elizabeth II, King Charles III, and many more. It's a cracking read. It went to the top of the charts for good reason. Do check it out. We've got a voice note now. Do we need to fix Benefits Britain? Here's a voice note from Joe.
Morning, Mark. In regards to the benefit giveaways, and obviously we all know that a lot of people are lying when it comes to getting benefit and a lot of fraudulent takers. So why don't we just use AI? Because straight away from one call now it can detect whether they think someone's lying. And then if it does, we can dig deeper. Very cheap method of doing it, going to save a lot of money. And let's get the poly test out if we have to, Let's just sort this out. If we get everyone that is lying off benefits, I think it'd probably half that bill.
What a brilliant idea, and the left would be in uproar. It would be so cruel. Well, I love your voice note, Joe, and the facts don't care about your feelings. If you're not ill, you shouldn't get benefits. And I'm so sorry, but, someone working in the public sector, Stephanie from accounts, off sick for 6 months or a year with stress. Do me a favour. Have you seen the inflation figures? Have you seen the unemployment figures? What about the stress that pub landlords are going through at the moment? What about the stress of the farmers and that egregious inheritance tax raid which has been reversed, but too late for those farmers that took their lives? That's what I call stress. That's what I call anxiety. Michael is in Durham. Morning, Michael.
Morning.
Mike, I always used to love the East Coast Main Line up to Edinburgh Uni, and I'd stop off in Durham, which is one of the finest English cities. How are things in Durham today?
Annoying. Right. Why are wrong?
That was a very brief weather forecast, and I enjoyed it. Mike, you don't mess around with Mike. He's got his point to make. So, Mike, what have you got for us on Benefits Britain?
Right. Yes, the benefit system has been taken the mick out of. We all know that. Everyone can see people that do it. But the fact that Kelly and yourself think that people who have autistic kids need to come on and justify the disability of their child, that really astounds me that there's people like that. I mean, the people who really, really need it have to jump through more hoops than, it's just annoying. Right? I deal with people every day, right, who have problems getting this, that, the other. And these are with young kids who kind of get stuff, right? And they've got real problems. We hear all this stuff about, send transports my day. But people who need it kind of get it, right? One person I know, it took them 6 weeks of trying to get it because they keep getting denied, right? There's people out there in desperate need, right? There's kids going to schools miles away because local councils, and bear in mind I'm in County Durham, do not provide the places in Durham. Do not provide the places here. It's all private now.
Yeah.
You're getting rid of the proper schools.
Right? Mike, you raised the key point, which is that what I want to do when we change the welfare system is take it away from some people, literally take it away from them and give it to others, including families struggling with autism. Stay on the line, Mike, because we've got the original voice note that's provoked your call. This is Kelly. Take a listen.
Morning, Mark. It's Kelly from Kent here. Would someone please tell me what on earth they need PIP for if they've got ADHD and even autism? What does the extra money go? Where does the extra money go?
Well, I suppose, Kelly, the issue is it's the scale, isn't it, of autism, because it can be a very low-level condition and therefore doesn't merit PIP, but for others it would. Claire in Redditch. Hi, Mark. In response to Kelly's voice message, I would politely like to say that many people who have ADHD and autism do work, but may find it difficult to do full-time hours. They may struggle a lot more than because of regulating themselves. She said, I'm one of them, says Claire. And bills still need to be paid, and I believe this is why the benefits are needed. Well, Claire, you raise a great point, and maybe that's the landing space here, Mike, is Claire's message, which is that there is support for people with autism, families whose kids have got autism, but maybe it's done on a case-by-case.
Exactly. I mean, my daughter's now 32. One of her friends at school, she now runs her own business. She was diagnosed as ADHD and autism just in December. Right? So she lived with it for years, but she got the diagnosis. But it is a spectrum. And you cannot have blanket ideas like, oh, let's have everyone ringing into a talk show and justifying what they get. You already do that when you get the money in the first place.
Mike, an important and powerful call. I'm so glad that you balanced that debate. And one of my favourite things about this show is that a comment will be made, maybe by me, maybe by a guest, maybe another caller, and then you'll call in with your own experience and your own expertise and contradict that. And I welcome that because these issues are complex. But I think William Yarwood, the media campaign manager at the Taxpayers Alliance, notwithstanding that many of these conditions are a grey area, overall, the welfare system is a hot mess, and there are some shocking incentives involved where there are people that don't need benefits on them and many that do that are not.
Yeah, indeed. I think one of the key problems is that our welfare bill, specifically the health and disability side of our benefits bill, is going to reach £100 billion by the end of this decade. Now, you have to sort of question how this is going to be paid for and how it's even remotely sustainable.
Isn't that about a third of a quarter of national income?
Yeah, pretty much. And also the overall welfare bill, if you take into account for social care, you take into account for pensions, you know, we're looking at, you know, hundreds and hundreds of billions of pounds altogether. And the question we have at the Taxpayers Alliance all the time is, how is this going to be paid for? Because inevitably it will just come in tax rises, but there's only so much you can squeeze out of the average taxpayer before they decide, you know what, I'm not going to bother working, I'm just going to go to the welfare state myself, or, as many people have done in this country, Mark, I'm just going to go abroad and live elsewhere.
We're at the top of the so-called Laffer curve. This is a curve, this is a chart which suggests that at a certain level of taxation, raising taxes doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, quite. I mean, and you're seeing that by the fact that we've had such a large exodus, not just of highly wealthy people, but people also in the middle brackets, people my age, people 26 to 30, who are just deciding, you know what, if I want to be successful in business, if I want to be successful in my life, if I want to be able to afford to start a family, I need to move to New Zealand, to the United States, to Australia, to elsewhere. And in my opinion, Mark, that doesn't make our country any more productive, any more wealthy.
It's the stuff of nightmares, to use a talent like you and many others. This is... Oh, we'll come back to that. I was going to just grab a quick call. Get one ready when you can, if you can, Christian. But listen, let me ask you overall then, because I think people don't realise that when you talk about that we're taxed too much, I think the political narrative that underpins that is that it's rich people complaining about paying their fair share.
Sure.
No. You'll be able to inform us. Everybody's paying too much tax.
Absolutely. I mean, we did a little work on the Taxpayers Alliance, as you'd expect. We call it lifetime tax. So we revealed in just earlier towards the end of last year that the average household, Mark, pays £1.3 million in lifetime taxes over their lifetime. Now, that is completely crazy, with £600,000 of that being income tax, and that's before even taking into account the threshold freezes that Rachel Reeves did at the last budget.
Well,
so it could be even more.
And maybe, you know, maybe I could help out at the Taxpayers Alliance, because you guys do such a good job, and I've got a few more things to throw in that I think we should draw attention to, which is you've got, you know, you hit that sort of tax-free threshold, then you start paying tax. You say those thresholds have been frozen, which is, of course, therefore a tax increase.
Yes,
by itself. But there are other ways that we're taxed, such as when we fill our car with petrol. I mean, I don't know what percentage of the fuel is actually taxed, but it's more than half.
It's about 5 or 6p per litre.
Yikes. Yeah. Then when you buy a pint, which we have to do because the economy is based on consumption, otherwise the pubs are going to close down. So you go and have a pint. What percentage of that pint is taxed?
About an overall third.
Right. So you don't just pay your tax. You drink a fluid, you're taxed. You drive in your car, you're taxed. You purchase some Jaffa cakes, you're taxed. So, or I can't remember if that is one of the VAT-free ones. But, you know, so and then there's the ultimate hidden tax, which is inflation. So, so the true figure for a lot of people is that more than half their money is going to the state.
Yeah, completely. I mean, and then take into account the people who buy new homes, things like stamp duty. You take into account, you know, inheritance tax, of course, which of course so many people can gain by having, you know, by delaying, you know, the way they pay it. But yeah, I think that this country is radically overtaxed, and that's because we have a bloated state which spends far too much money and then even can't afford to actually spend that money because they have to borrow more and more and more every single month, which then increases our overall national debt. I mean, I'm not sure if you know this, Mark, but our national debt now is over £2.8 trillion and is going up, get this, over £500 million a day.
This is absolutely shocking. It's a scandal. Those that lead us are asleep at the wheel. I'll come to Joan in Sunderland in a second, who's got her own story. William, can you tell us about the costs of social care in relation to adult asylum seekers? Because this is very concerning.
Yeah, sure. So this is the new paper we've put out just today, revealing what we're calling the sort of shadow social care system in local government, because a lot of us know about how local governments spend a lot of their money on sending social care, but little do we know how much they actually spend on illegal migrants and asylum seekers.
Yeah, because we're not talking about a care home for Auntie Mildred, are we?
No, we're not talking about them at all. And if you look at the dramatic increase, I mean, it's up 165% since 2019. So basically since the boats crisis begun, meaning there's a clear correlation between the boats crisis and spending on social care in local authorities. And my point on this, Mark, is that this is money that's being taken away from local services. It's being taken away from people who need sending social care, who are British nationals in their local areas. And the problem is councils have no real control over this because this is a statutory obligation imposed upon them by Westminster, so that even if they wanted to get rid of all of this, they actually couldn't. So my view in regards to this asylum seeker social care spending and legal migrant social care spending is quite simple. We need to make sure that they're not receiving social care in any way, and actually we need to solve the illegal migration crisis by detaining and deporting these people back to their countries of origin.
Amen to that. William, briefly, why are these asylum seekers needing social care? Aren't they sort of most of them in their 20s and 30s, young and fit? Do we know who these people are?
Well, so about 80% of the overall illegal migrant intake are men, and 20% of it are supposedly children. But actually, within that 20%, within that 20%, there's a 20% of those people who actually come into the country pretending to be children, and then they will actually get access to children's social care, which is way more expensive. So actually there could be a fleecing of the system there. But these things are such as like language interpreters, these are you know, other normal bits of social care spending that you'd expect. But my position on Mark is this: well, this is a completely unnecessary cost because we've completely lost control of our borders over the last few years, and virtually no one in our political scene has any idea of actually how to do anything about it.
I would call it the empathy tax. Pathological suicidal empathy, by the way. Couple of seconds. Joan, can you give me 20 seconds? What do you think?
Well, I was listening to your interview with Isabel Oakeshott, and it makes my blood boil to think that people who have broken into this country can be given not only a council house, but a new one. You can't tell me that there's not a council in this land that hasn't got a waiting list.
Brilliant stuff. Joan, you nailed it. Let's have a longer chat soon. William, more power to you at the Taxpayers Alliance. It's a brilliant, important expose of what's happening with our broken system. William Yarwood is their media campaign manager. The Queen that is Julia Hartley-Brewer is next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, 7:58, thank you so much for your company this morning and over the last 5 days. Oh, my goodness. See, look, someone in the studio that actually knows how to host a breakfast show. First of all, she turns up half an hour before she's due on air. Not 5:57. Julia Hartley-Brewer, always punctual and right about everything.
Yeah, obviously. I just thought I must have just come in a bit early. Lovely to see you, really. It's lovely to see you.
By the way, I had one job, breakfast show, get a time check right.
I still say good morning when it's about 1:45. Don't worry. Yeah, it's great to hear you on the breakfast show. Always good fun.
Too kind.
I'm just hoping Jeremy Carl's son has done well in his golf. Fingers no, he's apparently absolutely superb. Yeah, so much to talk about. Epstein files,
Huge.
Prince Andrew, Lord Manderson. Bye, Lord Manderson again, but still gets to stay as a peer. Why do you need to be a peer if you're not going to be in the House of Lords?
And as again, Starmer off the pace with this, could have chucked Mandelson out of the party.
Should never